Tiny. Okay, your keyboard is clickety clackety. Sorry. You should enable crisp. Why don't you have a crisp enabled? Oh, the timer just reset. But he's not back, so I'm gonna just drink straight out of the bottle here.
I want to enable
liquid courage, you know.
Liquid courage. Andy, this is how you drink hard alcohol. You turn it into a cocktail.
Nice.
And you put a sphere of ice in it because that's...
No. Okay, so my version of a cocktail is I get really nice rum. I put it in a shot glass, and then I drink it slowly.
That's not a cocktail. That's just slowly drinking quality rum, which is made from sugar and is therefore sweet.
Cocktail. Suck it. He's back.
What are your ingredients? Is it even on the rocks? Is it just
4 minutes?
No, it's neat. It's just
neat.
rum.
So it's not a cocktail.
No, it is a cocktail.
Welcome to the
You
future
missed
where
it.
we discuss cocktails.
Yes, welcome to
Straight rum is not a cocktail.
Straight rum in a little cup. Cocktail.
No, it's not.
I know it's not. I still like it.
This is a cocktail, and what you're drinking is not a cocktail.
Okay, see, but this isn't the way I normally have it, okay? It's just... I don't have a little cup.
The bottle?
I don't have a little cup.
Bottled cocktails? I remember
what?
that.
Gandor, I accept you for your booze drinking out of the bottle behaviors, but that's not a cocktail.
No. Okay. Here, wait. I found a cup. Let me make a cocktail real quick for the beginning of the show.
You gotta put something in it for it to be a cocktail.
No. So,
Citizen, I think what you're forgetting is that it is in itself a tale.
Okay, so this now. Wait. Okay, so I just have to put anything in it, right?
That's just a shot.
Okay, anything can go in it for it to be a cocktail.
Do you call just like scotch with like a touch of spring water? Is that a cocktail?
Of course it's not. I'm trying to be a jackass right now.
Oh, okay.
You're very
you're succeeding. Yeah, you're succeeding.
It's Gandoro Olop, everybody's favorite jackass.
Okay. So no. I just saw that you both had really strong feelings on this topic, and I wanted to see how strong those feelings were.
I don't really.
Gandora, you know me. It is
I'm
strong.
in favor of drinking.
Massa is a. Well, this is.
My feelings are as strong as my alcohol.
This is basically what I drink. That's it. I just a little bit of rum. I find good quality rum and just sip on this for a while.
That's beautiful. Like that's beautiful. I do that as well. However, that's not a cocktail.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with drinking just alcohol. It's a superior way. But
like a really nice rum, especially with an ice cube or something. Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Or poverty levels, just Jameson.
Okay, so for editing purposes, okay, first of all, I guess we'll ask the folks watching. Do you think we should include the part where we fought about what a cocktail was at the beginning of the YouTube video, or should we now put our arms up to signify the official start of the show?
No, I think we include the cocktails.
Are you sure? What's your vote, Massa? Do you feel like this is an important part of the future?
I just want to say, we should just specify that this is the first of everything here. So nothing matters, and there's a reason. That's the reason that I have a green screen, and there's no actual green screen.
Absolutely.
Going on. And let's just admit that this is a shit show. So just do whatever you want.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well, so for my feeling, this is going to be the official start. We ready? Okay, arms up. Just wave them like, something.
I have a boom arm in front of me. I can't do that.
What? There you go. That's
cut out.
That's perfect. Okay, welcome to the future. I'm Gandora Olap, and I have Nuff Butter and Maso Cuss for the very first episode of Welcome to the Future, where we are going to talk about the state of sci-fi, the future, and everything we feel like talking about after that. And I appreciate you all being here, and I hope you enjoy the show. First, I'm going to introduce Nuff Butter, a member of the Super Friends who I met a long, long time ago in StarCitizen, and who likes to paint paint airplanes and talk
But
about
figures.
how hard it is on a regular basis. Nut Butter, tell us a little bit about yourself and how hard it is to paint airplanes.
Well, I mean, you've done the introduction. That's pretty much me. I currently am an architecture student, which is what takes up most of my time when I'm not complaining about the difficulties of painting virtual airplanes for very small pittances. But yeah, I feel like that's a pretty quick and dirty intro of who I am.
Okay. You do stream on occasion. Can you tell them where you stream?
Oh yeah, I do very, very rarely and at absurd times, but I stream at on Twitch at Twitch TV/Nuffbutter, and I tend to stream whatever I'm working on. So no games, mostly just work.
Okay. And why are you named Nuff Butter?
I have no idea.
His other name
never
is
Nuff
No
Butter.
Chips for You, and that one makes me so angry every time I see it because I'm like, fuck you, I want chips now.
Well,
Okay. Masocast. He is a nerd and he has scientific knowledge so
Can you let me
wide
do my
and
intro?
so shallow, and he will tell you about it.
I won't though. Not now. You stole
Come
my
on.
thunder.
Come on.
As I just told Atlas, I am just a dude with a microphone and a camera. I play StarCitizen a bunch, and I really like the project. And on Mondays, I stream a thing where I call it Masso's Absolute Zero Effort science show, where we talk about random science and tech shit while I play StarCitizen and Futurism. And yeah.
All right, let's get a shout out from Masocast. Let's get a shout out. Well, it'll throttle even me. We'll do another shout out for Nuff Butter after that. I'm Gantor Olap. For those of you who don't know me, I am also a nerd with a very wide depth, or very wide breadth, and there's some deep spots, but I do also have a lot of shallow ends. I like to cover a lot of things. But I'm pretty big into certain things for sure. Let's see here. Well, there we go. I don't know what a hype train is, but apparently it's incoming. 5% amazing. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
We have a hype train that comes through this town every day at 4 a.m. And
Like, are you talking IRL train, Nuff
Yes.
Butter?
Yes.
An IRL hype train. It's just a bunch of assholes on a train.
Every morning. He's like, woo, woo. And I'm like, I'm trying to sleep. It's 4 a.m. What do you think is going on in the world, my friend? But he doesn't care. He has better things to do in life
Oh, he
than worry
does
about
care.
the sleep schedules of an entire college town.
No, he cares. And that's why he does it.
There you go. It's just the wrong kind of caring for you.
Direct.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I think before we jump into the video games, let's talk a little bit about IRL stuff that's happening in space and sci-fi. Let's start out talking about the latest launches. Nuff, you brought up some of the latest launches that we've had this month. You want to talk a little bit about what you've seen lately?
Yeah. Okay. So it's September, right?
It doesn't
Yes,
have to
yes, it is
just be
September.
this month because it's like September
but
3rd,
look,
so not a lot has
March
probably
to
happened.
September is 1 month right now.
Understood.
We're all on the same page.
I'm okay with that. This is the first episode. We could be like a summary of all of 2020, but like the
2020
good
summary.
parts, which is a real short
Well,
list.
I'd say there's two big aspects of space travel, 3 really, that have happened recently with SpaceX primarily. 2 of them are related a little bit closer, which is of course Crew Dragon. I think everybody had heard about Crew Dragon, which was the first manned launch from a SpaceX system, which is getting reusable spacecraft into space now with people on them, not just cargo. And that leads to the second point, which this is huge, of course, for the United States. space program and NASA, because now they're no longer reliant on the older Soyuz rockets being launched from Russia, of course, because they've had to go to that now that they're no longer able to use the space shuttle system after we discontinued that. So those two things are really big in the form of, let's get people back into space. Let's start looking at going back to the moon, going to Mars, expanding the human footprint on the universe. Those two things go hand in hand together. And then on the flip side, back around Earth, we have, I believe, Massa, you said the 60th set of satellites.
Oh, sorry, no, they just launched 60 more Starlinks.
60 more. Okay, I was going to say that number seems weird. But what is that? Do you know what that brings us up to for total Starlinks?
I don't know, but it's enough that they're already in beta in parts of northern Canada and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
It seems like the higher latitudes are getting their Starlink first. But, tests in non-tethered internet at high speeds is going, which is awesome. We might lose out. We might have global constellations, which is less so fun because we can't look at the pretty stars, but most of us can't see it anyways because we live in cities. And that leads to some exciting things that you had mentioned, Mesa, about a decentralization of the human population as we're no longer tethered to needing to be in cities for fast internet.
Stealing my shit.
No, this is a trans. You tell me about this.
Okay. Let's let Masa take. He's felt his thunder just pulled out far too much. Maso, thunder us. Thunder the fuck out of us. What do you got? What do you got for the latest in space?
Well, nothing now. No, but
no. Just imagine he didn't say anything.
Okay, first of all, one of the things also that SpaceX has done, and not in the last week, admittedly, but
last 3 days,
their Starhopper tests they did with their their big Starship, the first stage. Did you guys see that?
Oh, didn't they? They did the whole take off and actually land.
Yeah,
they didn't blow up this time.
They didn't blow up. Well, wasn't the blowing up in a intentional test that kind of went way beyond what it was supposed to be able to take anyways?
Probably. I believe so.
Yeah.
Where that seems to be space flight as a whole, as it always goes further than it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about that is the amount of thrust that thing has will basically be able to lift huge amounts of weight, and like you said about going to the moon, I mean, that's a huge stepping stone for us as a human species. Having a moon base with a much lower gravity well allows us to really seriously think about the industrialization of the solar system, and being able to kind of launch missions to mine asteroids, bring the material back, and instead of having to fire it back down into Earth, being able to kind of
pull it over to the moon or a space-based one. What I picture would be to have a proper sized space base in orbit, not the janky ass ISS thing that we have.
Well, that's already in the cards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, who's doing it?
Everybody who's in
it. There's
you're still,
it's even the U.S. doing it, because I'm just saying
it's not a national thing. It's a
okay. There's
a private
corporation.
Okay, based. Well, which
SpaceX
private
is definitely looking forward.
Okay, SpaceX is doing it, but what's their timeline on it?
Before Elon Musk dies of old age.
Okay, yeah. so we don't have anything. We don't have anything funded and ready. I mean, we've had things like this my whole life being discussed. Sure.
Yeah.
And then when they're done by a government, the problem is every 4 years they get nixed.
Yeah.
Because governments are wonderful
Here's
entities.
The thing. Ultimately, for any sort of large space-based industry, you need a moon base, basically, because the moon base. The moon is a spectacular. First of all, it's a spectacular source of material and fuel, and secondly, it's a low gravity well, so you can basically process stuff there for the cheap, and then fire. You can literally fire it off with a railgun. You don't even need to launch it into space using any sort of fuel.
Imagine Elon Musk's face. Not Elon Musk. Jeff Bezos, when he doesn't need a drone ship, he just has railguns to deliver you your.
Yeah, there you go.
What are you buying?
Your pineapple.
Yeah. Here's your Mars pineapple at Mach 67.
Okay, so that's generally where we are right now. It's looking like we're making really good progress on all the milestones for SpaceX. there haven't been
keeping
any
up with the
really
roadmap.
bad events, which is really unusual. So I'm happy about that. It's a little slice of reality that is happy times.
Else than the fact that 2020 is a bad event so far.
Well, understood. Yeah, but I mean, like, it's a nice little vertical slice of joy. So let's talk about Neuralink, right? I'm gonna let Maso start the discussion on Neuralink. You said that you had a little bit of discussion about this already. So I honestly, for context, I've been really, really into the neural reading and neural simulation stuff over the years. I actually, when I was running Virtual Robotics for 8 years, I sold and distributed EEG devices that connected with the Arduino and helped people develop code to control robots using EEG signals. So I'm really excited to see an advance in the neural stuff. And I hadn't actually heard about this until we were doing the pre-show and discussing it. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. And it sounded like Nuff Butter, you had a little bit of knowledge on the latest, or just that you had heard the buzzword and you wanted to talk about it. So Maso, this is your thunder moment.
Fuck that guy. It's me.
Yeah, it's his
Maso,
turn. It's his turn.
Give us the thunder. Give us the thunder.
The difference here is that instead of like having to have electrodes outside of your skull, reading what's going on inside your skull, which obviously would result in kind of like a reduced resolution of kind of like what inputs are going on in there. You have an input that actually threads like wires smaller than the human hair into and wraps along kind of your different kind of neurons inside your brain and even into your spinal column. So like this is potentially something that could like reconnect disconnected spinal columns, like and as far as like reading signals via EEG, this is something you could do with much greater precision because the wires are literally laying along the neurons into the areas of the requisite parts of the brain, directly and receiving inputs with much smaller energy requirements than like trying to, and much greater precision than scanning somebody's brain.
Okay, do they have a confirmed case of connecting neurons from two different parts of the body and actually getting the behavior you would expect?
Yes.
I.e., has this been used successfully?
They just did a live demonstration using a pig a couple days ago, obviously because you can't put it into humans yet.
Okay.
Thanks, FDA.
That's
3 different scenarios. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's actually really huge news. I didn't realize that that's what the technology was. So you're saying that basically this is an implant that can go directly against like your nerve packs to receive and retransmit the signals.
And importantly, it's removable.
Yeah.
Okay.
We saw
via surgery, or is it like can you describe like, is it basically like the Matrix where you like shove a thing in there and pop it out? So you end up with like a little.
It is entirely wireless.
Okay.
So the goal here is to get it to be basically NFC of you can connect it to your phone. Is I think what the intention is that your phone has an app on it that runs the sort of processing side of this, and that this is just a reading and writing device. But so there's no big sticking thing out of your head. There's no touching of. You don't have to have like the cord dangling down to your phone through a 3.5 millimeter jack. Entirely wireless.
Though you do have a small quarter-sized device that sits along your skull. As far as I
was
okay, so
that it was at least back here from the images they had released, and I thought that it was under the skin. Now it might not be under the skin; it might be in the skin either way. But you have hair.
I mean, it would be better. It would be better if it's not subcutaneous for the purposes of like if there was a way to have it just affixed on your top layers of skin, ideally.
The current one is a surgery that needs to be surgically added and removed. And from what they were releasing, it seems like they're sticking with a surgery method.
Okay.
but they want it to be a simple surgery. I don't think that it's even close to the levels of surgeries that we have now, where they're going to be waking you up and ensuring that they're not messing up any of your motor functions. I think that the end goal is basically just cut a little hole, put a little thing in, bye-bye.
Here's my big question, though. So is it both read and write, or is it read only?
Currently, it's read only. The goal is to get to read and write.
Because I believe...
sort of frightens me.
So the issue with the...
Also, like, I don't know.
Okay, so there's a couple...
It's both.
There's a couple things to keep in mind. So with something like that, you can actually add additional senses and some really cool shit when you do have the right capability. But based on what you're describing for the location there, you could actually kill people by putting the wrong signals in. If it's at the base of the skull, it's
in theory, yes.
So it's not the base of the skull. It's outside of the boy, it's been a long time since psychology class. It's outside of the part, the brainstem that does all the motor function, that does the breathing, the heart beating, all that. It's above.
Okay. So it's in your conscious center?
It is. I still have worries that if you can write, it depends on, I don't know. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm an architect. These are not even closely related. But
I'm a garbage truck driver.
All right. Well, so let's talk about Neuralink. No.
Okay.
I would worry, of course, that you could use this with malintent. With the writing function. The reading function is awesome.
Yeah.
If the writing function works like my brain thinks it could work, and we can have like true VR where you're just like laying in bed, not even moving, you're controlling your character just like it was yourself, that would be awesome.
But also dangerous. I can't see it because of the location. You would actually have to have multiple implants. You'd have to have a visual and auditory implant. But let's talk about Atlas's question here real quick before we get past it, because he's been asking. It sounds a lot like the cochlear implants, how they work with the hearing impaired. An internal implant into the brain allows the implant to be attached and removed via a magnetic plate just behind the ear.
That's what I understood.
Yeah.
But,
that actually does seem very similar, just a different location so that you can go to conscious thought as opposed to the senses.
Well, primarily it is for the senses right now. Like it is designed to basically combat various disabilities. But and this is what gets me excited, is the long-term applications are to basically facilitate assimilation with AI.
Yeah. Life over here.
It makes sense. Like, so there's a lot of advantages. Like I worked with some of the earlier tech, which would basically read your conscious brain signals and allow you to control things consciously. The trouble with those is like it's a lot of probe points. It's a fair amount of gear to have on. But I think the biggest mistake that the company that I was trying to work with there made was they closed sourced their whole dev toolkit, thinking that they could get people to pay for it. So then it turned into something that only universities were bothering with. It even priced me out of developing in it because I was in the military and couldn't afford it. I would have developed a lot of apps for it if it had been open source to me so that I could use it at that time. So it's nice to see more companies jumping in. My worry personally, whenever we have these kind of things come up and they choose to be too close-hatted about things, is they end up protecting their technology and killing the innovation that they could get during that time frame. I don't know if you guys kind of like, what do you guys think about that particular
right now it's
issue?
Like they're in more of a stage where being a little bit closed would help them. It's a 100-person team right now, and it's super pre-alpha tech demo stuff. Yeah. So I don't think that an open market would be the best, just because of course they do have to make a profit. So there is a need for them to make profit off of this. They are looking to get this into smartphone ranges of pricing. About $1,000, I think, was what
like
Elon
eventually,
Musk said.
but that's
course,
like
this is
way
also
down the road.
It's going to be inflated, so it might be $44,000 by the time we actually get this. But the buying power of $1,000 But yeah, again, that's end of the road stuff. But for now, yeah, they're really in development stage.
Well, they're in development and medical stage, and I think that's an
Yeah.
important distinction.
Yeah.
Well, and do you remember, Meso, what what was it, the FDA that just gave them a certification for this system? That was what they were really proud about, was that they had reached it was a grant, if I'm not mistaken, or at least like a level of certification that they had just received about Neuralink, and that was really why they did this tech demo, which was sort of saying, okay, we've seen the tech demo. We're willing to legally allow you to, in the future, if you can show that this is safe, put it in a human.
Yeah, they're basically getting to start.
But
they've got the testing on it.
They've got the medical and the legal side of, hey, we can do some more technology, more experimentation without having to become, Nazis.
As long as we allow it to not be racially driven, we should be okay there. So
honestly, the medical side of things is like, that is interesting and it's exciting, but honestly, the thing that excites me most about the prospect of Neuralink is the like widespread commercialization of potential of it. Where you end up with people being able to go in and buy neural augmentations that give them hard memory capabilities, lossless memory capabilities, the ability to, I don't know, just essentially run your smartphone inside of your head with a much higher bandwidth, as is, for example, like if you've listened to Elon Musk actually speak on these things, that's one of the things he's most excited about, is the concept of increasing the bandwidth that humans have with their cybernetic parts, which is essentially what our smartphones are.
Yeah, but actually directly linking them is a key step. For me, something that I've been most excited about actually would be something that we could do with this. I don't know if you're familiar with the studies that have been done. They've been fairly independent so far, but it's possible to actually add additional senses to the human body, to the human mind, by inputting signals from a sensor. And as someone who spent years with expertise integrating electronic sensors into things, this has been an area that I've been very interested. Imagine that you live somewhere that has a high incidence of radiation. If you actually had the ability to detect radiation in your mind, you could actually avoid the dangerous areas around you as a natural instinct. Right.
You could have a Geiger
counter. You could basically have a Geiger counter built in and basically train yourself to understand that signal as an indication of danger or not danger. And
I guess so. Yeah. That is one potential application.
Yeah.
Though I gotta say, like, more so with respect to radiation, I'm more in favor of just kind of engineering our genetics to a point where we don't really have to worry about the effects of that so much.
Well, there's also that, and this is not related to Elon Musk in the slightest. Long enough circular chain, you can connect them. There was also that recent discovery, and it might be a few years old at this point, about the bacteria in Chernobyl that is basically able to solve radiation. And they're thinking of using that in the space as a way for long-range travel. How do we stop solar radiation from getting to people without having to cover spaceships in lead? And they found this bacteria that's sort of able to help mitigate radiation that had evolved basically through Chernobyl, because bacteria can evolve far quicker than multicellular structures can. Or
the use of like molecular size robots to basically repair genetic damage from and like ultimately, if you had a system like Neuralink installed, you could control that sort of thing almost subconsciously.
If you could sort of perfect Neuralink to the state that it's sort of able to monitor RNA and DNA, you could even start solving cancer with that. But those are super sci-fi.
I wouldn't try and
personally. That's what we're talking about right now.
Personally, I wouldn't mix Neuralink and the RNA DNA repair piece.
I don't
Really.
think I would mix
What you're
them,
doing,
but I think
but why? Like it doesn't make sense to take this like imperfect thing on top of our shoulders and say repair my DNA.
No. But that's not what you're doing.
The repairing of the DNA. Use it as a medium. It is an input, right?
Yeah.
From the outside world, my cell phone right here. So I've got my cell phone, which can do so many things. I've got Neuralink, which is the input to my body.
Yep.
I don't want to stick a USB-C into the back of my head because I'm sorry, that just not.
It's like I'll bump into the wall, and you're like, "Shit, it broke."
If you had a connection,
your body now gets from the outside in, and then you can get to another service. I look at Neuralink's sort of commercial and consumer applications in the same way that if you talk about modern smartphones, right, and you talk about Qualcomm and the Snapdragon chips, right? I don't care what smartphone you have, it's probably got a Qualcomm chip in it, right?
Yep.
Apple, Android, Google, they've all got the Qualcomm chips. And it looks like there is a standing for Neuralink to become this sort of, we're the basis. We have done the research, we've done the math, we've built this product, and we have it, and you have to pay for it, obviously. But now, different companies, this is where the sort of competition comes in of how do you want to utilize the technology and how can you utilize it? And I think that as
the data,
exactly, yeah. So as long as the FBI isn't utilizing brainwave data.
So clearly we could go an entire episode just talking about this. I can tell there's a lot to talk about on this particular subject. We've got like a whole page of questions. So let's move on from this particular topic here. Let's go to another question that was asked by one of our viewers. I do want to mention that one of our viewers, Zarakanfish, mentioned that he knew of a fungus from Chernobyl that fed on radiation. So is it actually a bacteria or was it a fungus?
I was under the understanding it was a bacteria. I wouldn't be surprised if a fungus had also evolved to solve the problem.
Yeah.
I think it was a bacteria. It could be multiple things. But if I recall correctly, it is a black bacteria, not in mass. It has a black shape. Yeah. And they found it growing on the elephant's foot, which, if you know what that is, we're talking the most radioactive thing in the planet that we know of by far and away.
I was just picturing a literal elephant. And I was like, see, that sounds like fungus to me.
Yeah, it sounds like fungus. Now, if you're unfamiliar with it, it is the big rads. It will destroy camera equipment. The way that they were able to photograph this, we have a couple photographs of it, and they basically used mirrors because they needed the camera to be far enough away to be able to shoot through the corners of the hallway because of how radioactive this elephant's foot is, which is the core of the reactor that malfunctioned. It is what remains of it, and it's an adorable cattail. It is some bad stuff, but I think the bacteria was growing that, and Zarek knows lots of things.
Apparently it melted 4 cameras before they could get photos. And
it's pretty nasty stuff, and if bacteria can grow on it,
our viewers seem to agree that the internet says it's a fungus.
Okay, well, small brain.
But no, Norris. Hey, that's why we've got the whole of us here to collect the knowledge and pass it on. Again, a mile wide, an inch deep. Welcome to the future.
Very shallow.
Okay, so let's talk about this question. I think I know the answer to this question because I've been researching it pretty heavily. The question was, what are the intercontinental latencies expected for Starlink, and could this benefit StarCitizen? Which is someone attempting to segue into our StarCitizen topic, which will be next.
I'm not sure, but sorry.
My hair care products, Atlas.
If anyone actually has knowledge on it, feel free to chime in. But I was signing up for it myself, so I got the most recent report on it.
I would say I want to hear what you have to tell me.
Okay,
I have from a hypothetical standpoint, the reason that the primary business case, from what I understood, for the initial phases of Starlink were for high latency trading between banks across the Atlantic. So I'm not sure what the exact figures were, but I know that basically one of the primary customers for Starlink were some of the big banks that wanted faster latency than fiber optic cables across the Atlantic.
So a quick Google here. My source is ZDNet, a source that I cannot vouch for because I've never heard of them. But according to the FCC, SpaceX says that their most recent application, we're looking at latency of below 50 milliseconds, which is pretty nice, considering most of the games I play have above 100 milliseconds delay time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Gandor, you said you've applied for the service. Do you know what the current delay time is now, just in the small scale testing regions?
So a couple things happened. Basically, when they applied for that with the FCC, they were told that it was impossible by the FCC for them to get under 100 milliseconds, and they got tons and tons of pushback saying that they should, since they're space-based, they'd have to do a high latency like all the other space-based elements. And the company pushed to say, no, this is going to be in the low latency bracket. And the most recent tests have shown that they're under 100 milliseconds currently. So they're making progress in there. But
per second, if I'm not mistaken, too, right?
50 to 100, depending. Yeah. So they're
still quite good in improvement for most people.
Yeah. The lowest latency I saw right now was 60 milliseconds. So they're closing in on the 50 millisecond mark. But what I've seen is they're not quite there yet. They're not at their target, but they are definitely well below 100 millisecond, which is really good news considering what we were looking at is about a second plus for any competing space-based services that I've used. And everyone is pleased by the kitty, by the way. So
because kitties only
the cat's tail just
you can't control cats. Everybody knows.
No, anyone who tries to control a cat is just asking for trouble.
Control a cat is to close the door, and that's worse because then they'll just meow at you.
Yeah. He's also stepping all over my keyboard here, so sorry, Atlas, I can't respond to you because cat on keyboard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to address the comment about Kessler syndrome, so Zorak, I want to say, first of all, something really interesting and smart that they've done with Starlink is put them in low Earth orbit so that within 3 years they'll actually decay. They're also fairly small so that during their decay they're much less likely to cause a lot of collateral damage.
Because Kepler syndrome is bad, okay?
Yeah. I actually in the military worked as a space radar operator, and so it was my job to track all those things and identify their LSAT information. And so for like 5 years I tracked everything that orbited the planet and identified things that ran into each other. And like there was a period of time that I every 2 hours was tracking a toolbox and all the tools that were slowly falling out of that toolbox that was dropped out of the ISS. Right?
You astronauts for dropping toolboxes.
That's not good, man.
No, it was just like, and it was like, you had at first it was like I identified it before it had an LSAT. They were unknown objects. I'm like, what the fuck happened? You know, and then you call up and you're like, oh, one of the astronauts just dropped the toolbox. And then eventually I had to like identify, oh, that one's the camera, that one's the screwdriver, that one's the Allen wrench, right? Like, and so it was pretty nuts doing that. But yeah, definitely
like Zarek,
it is a concern.
All tether everything together. The Marines use them. They're called dummy cords. We could they're light. Put those in space. Oh no, I dropped it. Everything's tethered together. No problem.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Kessler syndrome is a thing. Like
We live and learn. We live and learn. Okay, so let's now jump into StarCitizen, guys. We're on a video game topic. Oh my gosh! Okay, 310. As you guys have probably noticed, it's a polarizing patch, and it seems like there's a lot of people who love it and a lot of people who want to burn it. So, Nuff Butter,
So
what do you think about that?
I wasn't aware that this was a polarizing patch. I've had nothing but glorious wonder come from 310. I don't have 30Ks, a few. And that was even 3.10.1 and 10.2. I haven't played 10.2 yet. School kicked up, so haven't had much time for 10.2. But I had no issues with it. It seemed like it only benefited the community. What were people angered about? Can you give me a rundown on that?
Do you want me to do
Yeah, go ahead, Maso. It's like he takes a swig of beer. We're like, okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Let's talk about this.
The main thing is that the main reason it's polarizing is because the experience is drastically different from player to player. Gandora was saying he's had no problems with it. You've been saying you've had no problems with it. There are people who still can't play the game since like 3.9 dropped. You know, like, yeah, that's the primary issue. It's that the reason, one of the reasons anyways, that it's so polarizing is that there are some people who have flawless experiences and there are other people who literally cannot even log in.
Sounds like a sort of similar experience that a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn players have had in the PC port, where I had a stellar experience with no problems, and my friend who has quite literally the same PC as me could not play for more than 15 minutes without a crash. So I wasn't aware that people were having such problems. My experience, not only through just playing it, but from what people were saying in the salt box, was that there was actually no salt. It was a crazy thing. I could play with my chat open as long as I wanted, and there weren't people complaining about they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. So I thought it was one of the most successful patches, at least 3.10.1 and 10.2. I'd say 10.2 maybe most successful because of the return of those ships. With how many ships? 93 million ships, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
what?
a lot.
No, not 93 million.
That seems like a lot.
93 million credits and ships, maybe. No, that's
okay. No,
it's a lot of ships got returned.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That was
to
really cool of them
through their logs. So I personally saw Q2 patch of StarCitizen to be successful overall, but I was completely unaware of any upsetness, and I hadn't actually heard of people not being able to play the game since 3.9. Did they remember to delete the user file?
Yep. Yeah. One of my buddies who used to stream StarCitizen regularly, Bearded Chegg, that was his like whole thing. Is he was like a very proficient StarCitizen player and literally had to just like take a step back from the game because since 3.9 dropped, he has not been able to play the game. You know,
strange.
And, yeah.
Is his build just not up to the task, or is it just a sort of non-hardware?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Well, we wouldn't know that his build wasn't up to the task. Is he running this on a 3 GB 1050 Ti and a laptop?
No, he's got an impressive you know, mid to high tier PC, and it's like this. It's like Zarek actually even just said in chat, you know, like just unplayable because there's a micro stutter. This is a recurring situation with multiple people. They've some people have a flawless experience, some people have a variety of issues that prevent them from playing the game.
So
let me 3.9, was that the inclusion of OCS?
No, OCS has been around for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
3.8 well, 3.9 included server-side OCS, right? Or was
server
that on
3.8?
No, I thought that was on 3.8.
No, server-side OCS came in before 3.9.
Yeah. So
Alice, that is my solution. It's worked out so far.
Okay.
Even if I only eat once a day.
Let me give my high-level understanding impression so far of why this is polarizing. Okay. So, and specifically 3.10. There are some people who have had trouble since 3.9 with some of the performance related things that are happening. Just like Zarak, he hasn't been able to play with me in a while, just because it is that some of their netcode is causing problems, particularly for systems that are not tuned in just for this purpose. But my concern is the people that have systems that are able to play it flawlessly who are still not enjoying the gameplay. And I wanted to address some of the things that I feel like are causing other streamers to not play the game right now. There was a lot of resistance to me getting this panel together tonight, and I really appreciate both of you being here. But it's also the reason during this time in the release cycle that it makes sense for us to have a broader show that talks about more topics than just StarCitizen, right? First of all, this happens every patch.
Yeah.
And everyone attributes it to something they think that is being done wrong in StarCitizen. But what has really happened is they got bored because they've consumed all of the new content that came out in the patch, and they want more. There is the issue right now for most of the people who primarily stream to be competitive PvPers, that they're really pissed off that missiles can basically destroy them, and it gets rid of that kind of need to actually have skill in the other areas. But I do want to talk to the point of what has made me enjoy the game a lot more, which is, first of all, I like the changes to the flight model. I like the improved stability, and I like the fact that I am forced to engage in combat up close and personal. It makes it more invigorating and enjoyable to actually see who I'm shooting at.
So could I mention a couple things on that point?
Sure.
I do a lot of, we mentioned earlier in the stream that, my background is texture work, and complaining about that mostly. But the texture work is all for a combat simulator. It's called DCS, and it's a modern combat sim that we do a lot of realism for, and a high fidelity aircraft. And I was very, very impressed with the StarCitizen new flight models. I found that they did a good balance of providing some realism and some weight to the aircraft. As somebody who, I wouldn't say I have the highest standards. I am not a real pilot, nor have I ever flown a space shuttle or been to space. But from my standards of experiencing sims and
Get
using
out of here.
Yeah, sorry, I know I'm useless. What do I know?
Where's your overlay? I need to turn him off.
I thought that Microsoft Flight Sim was kind of disappointing, but I expected it to be for me because I like shooting things.
There you go. Don't worry, guys. He's gone. I fixed it.
No. You can still hear my voice. A disembodied voice that will haunt you forever.
I need to vet my members so much harder.
Yeah.
Not a real astronaut.
I was really a fan of the combat updates. And I have a buddy of mine, my roommate now, who does StarCitizen with me, and the turret updates were huge. The fact that he and I could, I'd picked up a Vanguard Harbinger just so that he and I could fly together. And 3.9 was not possible. Did
I spell astronaut
from the fact
correctly?
where people died if they were in the Harbinger or the Vanguard's turret. The turret improvement was great, but just the flight models were good. It gives some weight.
That's not how you spell it.
How do I spell it, guys? Is it? It's a hard
That's how
word.
I'd spell it, so it works.
Yeah. Come on.
That's astronaut is an Astro Zero.
Here we go. Here we
But
go.
it makes sense if I'm an Astro Zero because I've never been to
He's
space.
not a real Astro Nugget until someone there you go. There it is.
Yeah, there you go.
I like Astro Nugget.
But no, I was really pleased with the flight model, but at the same time, being a DCS player, we of course live in a world of BVR. For those of you not familiar, that's beyond visual range. And that's the combat that takes place in the modern air world is Fox 3s, which are semi-active radar missiles where the aircraft doesn't require to hold a lock on the other aircraft with a radar, and the missile can fly for hundreds of about 100 miles, but effectively you're 40 miles away from somebody. Nautical miles, this is, right? So even larger than normal miles. You're 40 nautical miles away from somebody, and you're shooting them with a missile, and they have to immediately react to that missile. If they don't turn defensive and begin notching your missile, they will die. Now, this is a level of realism that shouldn't end up in StarCitizen.
Yeah,
it does aspire to be realistic, but nothing is more boring than notching missiles until the enemy aircraft runs out of them. It sucks. It really does. You're just like, oh, I can't shoot at anything because I'm turning and circling, and I'm trying to go forward and diving and running missiles in the ground. And it's all just, it's fun, but not for StarCitizen. But I think that missiles are, I've heard people both ways. I know people think the torpedoes are too powerful. I think that they're just as powerful as they need to be, but the things they're meant to kill aren't in the game. So if they're nerfed, they should only be nerfed
against starter ships.
Yeah, no. The size 9 torpedo, which is the size of the Aurora, should not be shot at an Aurora. It should be shot at Javelins and Krakens and Idrises and Carracks.
And that said, an Aurora should have a chance of dodging a missile that's its own size.
And that is true.
That's
I'm not a huge fan of the fact that the missiles can spin around in the air. Missiles today are very agile.
Yeah.
Thrust vector. The latest generation of thrust vectoring missiles, which is your AIM-9X, the Russians have their Archer. They're crazy. They don't seem to follow physics, but they definitely follow some physics quite a bit more than the StarCitizen ones that can spin around and hit you. I think once you've dodged the missile,
teleporting missiles, those are the best ones.
Yeah, I think the key is with both missiles and torpedoes. You need to be able to do something about them if you're skilled. I'm okay with you blowing up if you're just like, you just hear those things. But the thing is, once CIG acknowledged that there were certain things that didn't work about that protection, it made it a much bigger deal in the community. Whereas before that, people weren't really talking about it the way they are now. And
that's not true.
Flare system, I'd say, got degraded at 3.9.
It didn't get degraded. Specifically, it stopped
turned it
working.
Off, basically.
It just stopped working. I was pretty proficient about using chaff and flares. Again, I've got some prior experience with this, considering I've logged more hours in DCS, and I have no idea what countermeasures I'm selected currently in DCS or in StarCitizen, and I dump both.
No visual indicators.
There's no visual indicator with the new HUD, and that's problematic. And that does need to be changed. But then I do feel like even when I drop the right ones, they don't tend to work. Now, countermeasures don't work 100% of the time.
Countermeasures don't work. Or chaff doesn't work at all.
No.
And the flares work sometimes.
I'm talking about in the real world. Chaff and countermeasures. You don't just dump flares and the missile gets confused. They're very smart these days.
Yeah.
And you have to be putting maneuvers. Now, if StarCitizen wants to get to this level, I'm all for it. The fact that, in the past, you could sort of just sit still and, I'm going to press the flare button and missile miss me. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
You do need to begin to confuse missiles, and you need to think about missiles as threats. And that's sort of where they come in in combat. It is alarming a new player or a less experienced combat player.
And for that to really work, their HUD has to give you a better indication of the heading and direction that those kinds of things are coming from for you to actually be able to dodge
systems today. We've had them since the F4 Phantom that was flying around in Vietnam had a missile or a radar warning receiver, a missile indicator system. What direction am I being locked up from? In the missile realm, especially if I hope by the time they add missile operator mode, that they also improve the ability to countermeasure a missile, because even I think then you get to the aspect of missiles can be used to enforce a movement, and that's what in DCS you can use it. I'm shooting a missile at you, and the goal isn't for that missile to kill you. It'd be nice, but I know you can dodge it. But what I'm getting you to do is turn cold, and you have to engage. You have to disengage me for the missile, which then allows me to position myself in a better spot to typically shoot another missile. That would be a cool thing to see in StarCitizen, because I think there's a huge aspect, and I'll let you guys add to this, especially since it's your stream, Gandora. But I think there's a huge void in what makes a good PvP player in StarCitizen. It's only about aim right now.
Yeah.
aim, ship, maybe if you have a Hawk or a Sentinel when you're using EMPs or quantum entanglement devices, you know, if you've got a Cutlass Blue or a Mantis. But really, it's just how good are you at putting a crosshair with a dot over a circle and pressing some buttons, and how good is your build? And if they want to get away from min-maxing, then they need to start adding tactics, because that's the only way to defeat min-maxing, is saying, you might be min-max for offensive and defensive, but it doesn't matter because I'm shooting missiles at you every 5 seconds, which is making you react. And because you're reacting, now you're no longer able to get your gun on target, which means I'm able to then beat you because the ship carries too many missiles.
Let me cover a couple things that I think would help in this case. Okay, first of all, they've already adjusted the maneuverability of ships. So the next stage is, first of all, force missiles and torpedoes to actually be thrusting and flying so that they have to do maneuvers like a ship would, giving small ships an advantage at outmaneuvering and outflanking those things. And they have to get rid of the whole sticking to your ass kind of thing. They can't just attach to you. They can't like auto follow you like that. They have to, just like the AI has to chase you, those have to chase you down. And that would allow small vehicles that are super outgunned to have the ability to lead them back into the person that shot them, etc. Lots of really cool things you could do at that case. But the other piece is auto gimbals and missiles and torpedoes need to have effective countermeasures that can be used against them if you have the skill and you have them equipped to your ship.
Chaff should work for auto gimbals because they're supposedly radar locked, and Chaff should defeat that.
Exactly. Chaff should make it harder for you to lock on auto gimbals, right?
So,
and I've already noticed they've done some significant work on the auto gimbals. Yeah. Auto lock.
The auto gimbals are not nearly as overpowered as they were. This just occurred to me too, and I'd forgotten about this. The real world, there are 2 types of missiles. There's 3, but there's really 2: radar and heat seeking. In StarCitizen, we have 3: radar, which is cross section; heat seeking, which is infrared; and then EM, which is mystical magic that I don't understand. The problem comes from, well, one, somehow cross-section missiles aren't defeated by chaff, but EM is, even though chaff defeats cross-section missiles. That's what it's used for.
I think EM is supposed to be more like what radar-guided missiles are.
Well, but that's cross-section.
Yeah.
EM
is supposed to be electromagnetic radiation.
They might have gotten it mixed up, but that still means that you have 2 countermeasures and 3 missiles. And they don't all, their cross-section is not countermeasurable.
See, but you can't. You can turn your EM down by going into stealth mode.
You can't change your cross section though.
No. But you should be able to defeat that with chaff. I think you're right there. That was just
there is a missile type. It's an active radar missile. It's Fox 1. You are required to maintain a lock from the moment you shoot the missile to the moment the missile impacts the target, because the missile isn't guiding itself. The ship is. I think they could balance cross-section, what is called a cross-section missile, which is a non-countermeasurable missile, by requiring you to maintain a lock on that ship the whole way through. Because currently, it's going to keep following you, right? And they can launch at you and turn away and go away. Because if they're in Eclipse, they know you're not going to survive their size 9 missile. They launch, they get off, they do their thing, they get a double dog from her L3. But if you require them to keep a lock the whole way through, you balance out the problem of, if you're a nimble ship, you're in an Aurora, you're in a Mustang, a Saber, a small fighter. I went over your head, missile is useless. Now it's sailed off away and it's lost its lock on the target, so it's no longer capable of tracking.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think there's.
Honestly, I'm certain that that's what we're going to probably get in missile operator mode. Going back to why people are frustrated about 310, that's one of the issues right there, is that they've moved missile operator mode. Like, most people were willing to sit out 310 with missiles being as broken as they are, and it's not just countermeasures.
Yeah,
to be
under the assumption that it was going to come.
The missiles mobility is excessive. I fly Aegis ships.
Damage too. Like they switched from, there's a bug now where basically missile damage used to impact on 3 of your shield faces and then bleed through into your hull. Now they impact only one shield face and bleed straight through into your hull. So not only are missiles unavoidable now, they're doing fuck tons
way
more
more
damage.
damage.
More
Yeah.
effective damage to the ships. Their numbers haven't changed too much. And the other thing, the other
They
issue with
spread the
missiles
damage, and
is
that's one of the reasons why people have been frustrated with 3.10, because now all of a sudden, instead of being like assuaged by the idea that we're going to get a fix in 3.11, where we're supposed to get a complete rework of how missiles work, now we're looking at a 6 to 9 month window between now, where missiles are fucking broken, and where they're going to be fixed. And that's where a lot of that combat fatigue is coming from. It's not only because countermeasures don't work, it's because the damage is bugged on them. And now we're talking about like I said, like a 6 to 9 month window for a fix. And that sucks, man. Like, I can tell you, even as somebody who's not a primary PvP player and somebody who plays, like a PvP or PvE combat, that makes me not want to play the game.
Yeah.
Because an arrow can take like 2 missiles tops, and they're dead.
A size 5, if I've got, I think it actually ends up being good that missile operator mode got moved down the road. And only because I think it's easier to make missiles better than it is to make them worse. Because from a person, I fly a Harbinger mostly for combat. I've got 5 different types of missiles on that thing of all varying sizes, right? What I'd love to do is just lock you up with 3 size 5s immediately and send 15,000 damage worth of missiles at you, but I can't. I've got to bleed through whatever missiles they've decided I'll shoot first. Sometimes they're the size 1s, sometimes they're the size 3s. It changes what they are. And I think that if they put in the first iteration of missile operator mode, which was to fix shooting them, it would have really, really damaged combat, because you wouldn't have had the option of, if I'm shooting, I build a brawler build, so I'm loading lots of small missiles, which really, I think currently is broken. I don't necessarily like the idea that more smaller guns is better than one larger gun.
Yeah.
The best way to build a ship is to put as many small guns on it as you can.
Yeah.
If you're building like, say, a Hornet, don't use size 3 and size 4 mounts. No, make those as small as you can. Make them the largest, but the maximum you can. If you can put 2 guns on one mount, do it, because 2 size 1s is more damage than 1 size 2.
Yeah, but that's temporary. Like, that's a product of the current damage.
And that's because
same thing with the missiles, right? So let's go ahead, and we do have to move on to the next question. But my suggestion to CIG, based on what we're discussing, temporarily, all you have to do is nerf the damage across the board on missiles.
Yep.
And most people would be okay with playing again. You've done it with many other weapons. You've done it with many other weapons. Do a temporary nerf on the damage across the board for missiles. People will chill the fuck out, and then we can enjoy the game a little more the way we're used to, while enjoying all the amazing improvements that you put in. But we're all there's a lot of people distracted by the way this has affected PvP. And the last point I'll make on why this is people are bored time. We haven't had a new location to explore in a long time. Nothing significant. A freaking Apple store at New Babbage does not count as a new location for me. It's not a new planet, not a new moon. So
can't you not to give more money to a planetary corporation? It's going to be so cool. Your Moby-Glass will be different colors.
Yeah, and then it won't work. Trust me, I've tried it. Okay, so let's okay. Here's the next question, guys. Why is iCache such a big deal? Do you think it's critical that CIG managed to implement it by end of year?
Yes.
I think it's a universal agreement. Yes. I have a couple things I want to mention about this in relation to the thing that you just said, Gandhi. But Meso, I'm going to let you take the lead on this for now, since I spoke a lot about missiles.
You really did. Go ahead, Meso Cass.
Well, okay. To be fair, I did appreciate your expertise on missiles, because I don't play DCS at all.
I did too, even though you're not a real astronaut.
Yeah.
Fake astronaut 2020.
I'm pretty sure astronauts don't fire missiles.
This is true. Well, the
Actually,
Russians have.
most of the astronauts,
Yeah, they're
most
almost all
original
former test
astronauts were
pilots.
fighter pilots, so they probably
Yeah, exactly.
actually have.
They probably
Yeah.
have more knowledge on missiles
Okay.
than I do.
And I suppose technically, if they're launching into space, they're basically
On a
firing
missile.
Yeah.
But are they the ones that fired it? Okay, this is way too deep a topic. Okay, iCache.
Okay.
Give us
iCache
the high level.
specifically. Okay, I actually proposed this one, and it's because after kind of like watching various Discord channels and stuff like that, it seems to me like most of the people who talk about iCache seem to think it's mostly just an inventory system that's coming in, but iCache is so much more than that. Like, it is a critical piece of back-end tech that tracks all of the minute pieces of what's going on in Star Citizen, whether it be, the components on your ship or the components on your person. And like what's the deal with iCache? Well, I don't know. I would just say that like one of the things that people need to get through their head is that iCache has the potential to absolutely revolutionize the way that we play Star Citizen. Like, it can affect the networking side of things. It affects the ability for us to have other gameplay loops inside of it. So is it critical that CIG has it in by the end of the year? Absolutely, yes. I think it is, because like, if you want salvage, guess what? We got to have iCache. If you want physicalized damage to, make it so that those Hornet builds where you're loading up on small guns, like, are better than those big, large guns, well, guess what? You need iCache, for that physicalized damage system in order to, like, really make the distinction between those guns. I just really think that that there's a lot to say about the iCache system and what it can do for our current iteration of Star Citizen. And, like, as somebody who streams Star Citizen sometimes, I can tell you, like, I'm getting pretty burnt out with the current Star Citizen game. And in order to kind of reinvigorate that long-term player base, that in-depth kind of player base, and the content creators and stuff, we need new gameplay in there, and we're not going to get that without iCache. And yeah, anyways, that's what I think about iCache. I'm not a techie person, so I'm sure I have missed things, and that's why, like, I'm kind of excited to be on a cast with you two guys, because I know that you're, like, much more technical minded and stuff like that than I am. So basically, I'm looking for some tell me I'm right.
You're very correct. No,
Enough butter. Go ahead and give your thoughts on iCache, and I'll wrap up, and we can keep on talking about it after that if we still.
I think that iCache is just as important, as you said, for sort of going forward with the core systems behind Star Citizen. But I think that what it really does in the near future for us, beyond just salvage, is your player cap. And Gandhi had just mentioned that, we haven't had a new location since Microtech, which is true. And people are bored because people want to explore new locations. And why haven't they added new locations? We've seen some stuff on ISC about these new gas cloud areas that they're going to put in. And they could put in more locations on planets. They could put in small asteroids that you could go explore that had, some more than just, maybe more comet-sized things that you could go explore. But why haven't they? And I think one of the reasons is, do you guys remember back when it was just Porto? I'm not sure if you guys were playing back then, but when there was nothing in the universe
long before then, young whippersnapper.
Boy, I've been
whippersnapper, young crier.
I've been playing since 2014. So.
Yeah, me too.
But back then when it was just Porto, remember how busy Porto was? Yeah. How many interactions you had with another player? Even though the server sizes were smaller, you had more interactions with individuals. I can go an entire day without not seeing another human being ship.
Yep.
Especially if I'm running my combat runs between this airspace around Hurston and in Lagrange Point 1, bounce back and forth between those for hours and maybe see one person ship. And it's just because there is too much to do. And even if they start adding in more stuff, more locations, that stretches the amount of people even thinner, and you have less contact with others. And I think what iCache allows them to do is save some server resources. And I think they've hinted at this in a couple of their ISCs and their calling all devs and whatnot, that you get some larger player caps that can come through because of iCache, or at least that it paves the way for getting a higher player cap, which then allows them to add more. And once they add more, then everybody will be happy. But without iCache, you're trying to build a house without a foundation. Yeah. So I think it's very important. I don't necessarily think that it's critical from a gameplay standpoint that they get it in by the end of the year. I think it's more critical from a standpoint of let's get the community reinterested.
See,
which for a developing company is just as important.
I'm going to contest you there because like getting it in by the end of the year allows them to kind of like focus on gameplay in 2021. Yeah. That's why I think it's critical for them to get it in by the end of the year, because right now, basically, with all the people that you've roped in throughout this year, if you are not implementing, and let's be honest here, like that is a lot of people. Like look at their funding numbers and stuff like that. It's a lot of new players. Most of those new players are not going to be hardcore, crazy masochists like us who are willing to kind of like be super interested and stick around. They are looking for gameplay. Yeah. And unless CIG starts really focusing on new gameplay loops and stuff like that, soon all those players are going to go away. And that means that all the money that they might spend is also going to go away. And sure, you might rope new players in along the way and stuff like that. I'm sure you will. But unless iCache is in and we have new gameplay loops coming out sooner rather than later, the funding is going to decrease, and that will decrease the chances of this game releasing at the scope that we want it to release.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I did try to make that mention that from a perspective of a developing company, it is very important that they get people interested, because they exist based on their player base. But there are, if they aren't able to get it in by the end of the year, from the actual development of what can we do, they still have things they can work on, even if it takes until Q1 2021 to get this in. But I do think that, if the sooner they get it in, the better, because that allows them to do more quicker for their player base, get their money back, get their player base back, because, they have the money, but if no one ends up playing the game when it comes out, then, you're just as worse off as you were before.
Yeah,
totally.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Well, okay. I was going to say that like, yes, I agree with what you're saying in that, like, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they didn't get iCache in by the end of the year. But like that basically pushes everything, all the subsequent gameplay additions down even further. And I think that can have a kind of a ripple effect later on down the road, and that would be deleterious to the effect or to the development of StarCitizen. Okay.
So I want to. This is pretty well my wheelhouse as someone who develops web applications and handles network infrastructure and stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit from my perspective on where I see them from watching all the shows and talking with all their experts over the last 2 years. And particularly with where the roadmap is right now. Okay. First of all, iCache is absolutely necessary for us to hit meshing. Server meshing is actually what you guys have been discussing as far as the ability for us to support more players at a large scale and more locations. And let me explain why. Okay. The idea with server meshing actually allows us to have even a whole dedicated server just for, like, say a small portion of Stanton. Like, you could have a server that's dedicated just to Microtech region of Stanton it has those object containers on it, because you have so many players there that server has become dedicated just to handling those players. And you would actually, while you're in quantum, be handed over to a separate session in order to handle things there. And they would be talking through each other through the iCache APIs, so that you have a unified vision of where you're going to be, and what's there. That way, when you come into my ship and you have a stack of 500 turtles, when I find them again, right, that's going to persist across all the servers, not just on the particular instance that we're on. And the instances right now are completely volatile because they're in memory on those single instances. And that means that they're limited to basically 64 or 128 gigabytes of memory for usage for anything that's going on that server, which has been the most critical limitation to our ability to get wider scale behaviors on those servers. So the idea would be that ideally, even if your server actually crashed, it would just pass you to another server automatically, and iCache basically knows everything that's going on. So as long as that service is still up, you're not going to actually lose your ability to keep on playing the game. You may get a little bit of a stutter while you're passed randomly to another server, but fundamentally, we should be able to drive more stability, even if there is some churn in the back end on these, as long as they do a really good job of implementing this. And
I think exactly.
Yeah. What's up?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that with iCache and the server meshing, iCache being the first sort of step towards SM, I would say that you see Pyro as well. With the first, if I was going to have to take a pot shot and a bet, my bet would be that the first instance that you will see of server meshing comes with the transportation from Stanton system to Pyro system. Because it's a long period that they can switch your server there.
That's a possibility, and actually, that was one of the questions I wanted to cover. So if we want to transition to that question real quick, so we can each do our. So when do you expect to see Pyro?
Okay, first of all, I have to go back here because my cat is knocking things over.
As they do.
Well, one of them. I think this is one of the things that the StarCitizen community often does, is that they brush over iCache in favor of server meshing. And that was kind of my point about this whole topic, was that, yes, server meshing will be one of the critical, I would say the critical implementation for the viability of StarCitizen in the future, but iCache is more than just something that enables server meshing, and I think that's really important to kind of dwell on and realize how important iCache is and how much iCache can improve current gameplay without server meshing.
So
and go ahead.
So we talked about the fact that it's related to physicalized inventory, and we've talked about its relation to meshing.
Yep. But that's kind of what I'm talking about.
It's
like going from the inventory to meshing is a mistake. That's what that's what a large portion of the StarCitizen community does. But the thing that I think is glossed over is the fact that you can't have salvage, for example, without iCache. You can't have physicalized damage without iCache. You can't have physicalized components without iCache. And those three things right there that I've just mentioned have huge gameplay implications.
Well, and we see the current, especially those of us that are, a little bit more jaded, but have been around since way pre, persistence, where persistence was a fledgling idea. And a lot of people look at the game we have there and go, oh yeah, we have persistence. Yeah. your ship stays through patches, your guns stay on after your ship's been blown up. It's awesome. It's persistent. And iCache is the completion of that persistence arc in StarCitizen of now you persist between servers on a small scale.
Sure.
Of, oh, here's my little penguin. Or, I put a little hula girl on my ship dash.
Again, I think that's surface level, and I think acknowledging that, for example, like let's just look at physicalized components and physicalized damage and all the gameplay implications that those systems would have right now. So for example, right now you just get your health pool goes to 0, you blow up. That is the way we are right now. iCache enables us to have that disable system where your components start taking damage and your components go down, and you have kind of that disable and all of the gameplay that goes along with disabling a ship instead of it just exploding.
I will say that they could implement TTD already without iCache, but,
sure, but
the way that they're choosing to do it does require it.
Yes.
Well, and in a way that wouldn't make use of their future tech. iCache is, of course, something that's coming, and they've been putting a lot of work into it recently. I think that after they got server-side OCS, they went towards iCache as their next big tech, and they might as well wait for iCache to come through to develop a tech. There's no sense developing the tech twice.
Absolutely.
You do realize
that's exactly what I'm saying.
You guys realize they've already implemented iCache into some of the systems, right?
They have implemented,
not into all of it.
Yes. Yeah. Correct.
So it is there, and it's being used, and they are slowly replacing all of the old ways of doing things with it. So that is super positive news. We basically have a partial implementation of iCache already. All of the APIs are in place, and they are being used in some parts of the code. And so that's I just wanted to make sure that we understood that.
Absolutely. But I think the major thing that I think a lot of people miss is that it is okay, I'm just actually going to say, I'll just kind of rewind my previous statement about how server meshing is the key implementation for StarCitizen as we want it, and I will actually just rewind it back and say iCache is in fact that implementation, because iCache touches like so many aspects of gameplay. Like the major changes that are going to happen in our immediate gameplay are going to be a result of iCache, not server meshing.
Server meshing allows us more locations.
Yes.
And more players in those locations, whereas iCache is going to contribute to every single gameplay loop that hasn't been implemented yet, and change every single gameplay loop that is already implemented that is not currently using it.
Exactly. And that is one of the things that I think is very, very important. It's one of the things that I get a little bit frustrated personally when I hear people just kind of like brushing over iCache as some sort of inventory system or precursor to server meshing. It's so much more than that, and I think it's something that one of the things I wanted to kind of discuss on this show specifically, because I think iCache will go further to realizing the day-to-day gameplay that we want in StarCitizen than server meshing will. And I think it's important to acknowledge, and I don't want it to kind of kind of make sure that the people who are at least watching this kind of like get a grasp on that, because a lot of people think like, oh, where is salvage? Oh, where are these gameplay loops? And it's like, well, those gameplay loops are there. They just can't be in until we get this in. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about, because it's, from the sounds of things, it sounds like iCache is very close to completion. And I will still stick to my initial statement in that I think it is critical for them to do their utmost to get it in by the end of the year, because there is so much in 2021 that could come in when we have iCache implemented and kind of working through the bugs on it.
Yeah. I feel like they've already started rolling it out, and they just have a list of thousands of places that the code touches. That's what they've been talking about, basically replacing all of these ownership statements of information with something that basically says, can I tell, am I the owner of this information? Am I the session owner, or am I talking to iCache for this? Right? Basically, am I writing to iCache, or am I reading from iCache in this particular instance?
You want to sell ships that you stole? You need iCache. You want to be a pirate and steal people's cargo? You need iCache. You need
well, maybe the default is that we look at, does iCache, allow for server meshing, or does server meshing require iCache, or they go hand. They're not, but they're not stepping stones. They provide. They are, the end vision that has been had for this game requires both of them.
Okay.
Yep.
But in their own ways, they're also completely separate. iCache allows for all those things, and then server meshing is the idea that you're not going to be on 8 different star systems with 50 people. So with iCache, you get all of the aspects that allow for different gameplay loops. And then once you have a need for those gameplay loops, then it's, so server meshing allows for the population increase, but without iCache doing its own, separated, half integrated things where, you don't need server meshing for piracy, or you don't need server meshing for scrapping or anything like that. Right.
But
without server meshing, you have such a little access to those jobs, right? So they both work hand in hand to create the end experience, where iCache is the primary actor of salvage.
Yep.
But without server meshing,
I did want to remind the viewers, first of all, if you're new, be sure to follow. Second of all, if you have a question for the panel, make sure to use the Gandhi Give Wisdom option, or to put big brackets question and indicate the question you want to have. If it's related to what we're talking about right now, I'll try and ask it right now. But otherwise, I'll try and fit into the show. So I think we've hit on iCache a lot.
Yep.
So
I had to hammer that one.
No, it was really important that we talk about it and really explain what is going on with it. But let's jump into the question about Pyro, because it's an interesting one, and it still touches on iCache and meshing, from my opinion. So, Mastercast, when do you think we should see Pyro? When do you expect to see Pyro?
Well, at the beginning of this year, I would have said, end of year, we'll probably see it. At this point, no, I don't think we'll see iCache this year.
Not iCache.
Pyro.
You're like, we have to see it this year, but we won't.
Yeah.
for iCache.
But basically, we'll see Pyro for sure next year, would be my guess. We won't see it this year. And honestly, I'm okay with that, because like again, like I've been saying, I've been feeling a little bit burnt out on the game right now, and like I don't even really care. Like if Pyro is in, it's going to be the same shit in a different system. And I'm more excited about the prospect of Pyro coming in tandem with other potential gameplay loops. So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I don't really care if Pyro comes in this year. I'm more concerned with back-end tech coming in this year and allowing for Pyro to be something that's legitimately meaningful next year. Okay.
How about you, Nutbutter? When do you expect it?
I think I agree that it's a next year thing. I think that in the beginning of 2020, we were all, and given that we didn't know about COVID, it very well may end up being a 2020 inclusion. But I think that everybody hit to their production timelines because of shelter in place and bandwidth changes that they have mentioned multiple times about just difficulties producing things because now everyone's working from home. So I think 2021 is a good timeline to see Pyro, and I think that it would be well executed as a expansion of anything piracy related, which of course, the conversation we just had relies on iCache.
Yes,
but I think because if they've mentioned several times that Pyro is PvP, You're going into, most of StarCitizen is a PvP enabled zone, but you are punished. Pyro is PvP.
Yeah, PvP
There's
unpunished.
there's a lack of a police system in that area, so you will be squaring up and fighting down human players who don't have the I killed you, whatever I got from that, and also a crime stat, which is awesome. Crime stats might not transfer over. You're looking at a lot of dead space, and I think obviously that adds more risk to the game. I think trade could be improved.
I expect a lot of unmonitored spaces.
I think Pyro is mostly unmonitored space, and I think that iCache and sort of the completion of full persistence that comes with iCache is going to be required to experience Pyro to the fullest. So I'm more than happy to let Pyro sit as a separate area that even if they were like, oh yeah, we got all the planets done, but the tech's just not there to make it enjoyable, I would be okay to say push it back one patch to get all the iCache systems full persistence, as close to full persistence as we can get with the technology that we would have at the time, and then dump it. Just dump the dump truck right on all of us and give us so much stuff we don't know what to do with it all. Because I think we'd be shocked with a Pyro inclusion. We're talking 4 planets, 6 moons. That's a pretty big system. That is doubling the space that we have. We would have no idea what to do with ourselves. Except shoot each other.
My expectation. So looking at their current state, they actually have stuff in Pyro in like polish phases. Mm-hmm. So they're almost done with Pyro. It's just a matter of having the core tech in place to make it feasible for us to be playing in Pyro. So if I was in their position, I would be doing something similar to what they're doing, where they already rolled out iCache and they're just kind of finishing implementation on it while they patch things. And my hope is that they'll have most of iCache buttoned up by this next major patch, and that either in the December patch or the Q1 patch of next year that they'll have meshing. So I would expect Pyro to actually go live in Q2 of next year. Looking at what they have in front of them, that seems like a realistic expectation on when to actually see it in place.
I think I would agree with you. Yeah. Q2, and then even in the worst case scenario, Q3. But I couldn't see it requiring Q4. They've been able to, on the graphics side, put in a lot of kick-ass work for it over the last year. And that they've been showing to us too. I also want to say that they may have meshing to a point that they could surprise us and do a Q4 this year or a Q1.
Of Pyro?
No, not a Pyro. Really?
Okay.
But of meshing. They could they could have meshing out and do an increase of server sizes as kind of a build-up. I disagree with you, Enough Butter, on saying that you should release meshing and Pyro at the same time. I feel like you should release meshing independently so that you can really vet that out and not have all the noise of a new solar system in place.
Yeah, so I was just saying that if I was looking at it from a where could I implement it?
Yeah.
The most beta sense of it's going to be slow. Well, I can limit the amount of time it takes for you to get from Stanton to Pyro. I know that time because
I can make the maze that long.
Right? If it's a 4-minute jump, okay, I've got 4 minutes to load all the stuff around you, and I can work with it. And to me, in a very basic sense, that seems like the easiest implementation. But if they can implement it earlier, I wouldn't be like, oh no, save it for Pyro. No, implement it earlier, fix the bugs, because Pyro could come with a lot of bugs, at least in the Evocati stage. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some hidden Evo bugs that they ran into with a lot of ground clipping issues.
Yeah, like I would like to see a meshing patch before the end of the year if they really are that far along. I personally feel like it would be good for us to just push on it quickly because we're not really bringing a lot of new stuff in. Let's take the fucking risks. That's my opinion on it. I feel like we should be pushing the tech in as quickly as we can because of the fact that it's blocking so much potential. And we're gonna talk later tonight about DualUniverse, which is gonna be taking a dent in this, and then we have Elite Dangerous gearing up to try and jump into the market as well with Space Legs. Everyone is going to catch up if we do not quickly get more locations and more players in position. It's an important thing to keep in mind is that, like, if we as StarCitizen backers and if they as StarCitizen developers are taking this year to implement core tech, I am personally of the opinion that if you have something working enough that the servers don't die any more than they already do, that I'd rather see servers up and meshing and having dedicated servers for individual planetary systems as quickly as possible this year. Like ideally Q4.
To give your player base.
I just really think it's unlikely, personally.
I think that it's unlikely only given their lack of tenacity.
There's a reluctance to put something out that doesn't have a level of polish to it. They don't like putting things out that aren't at a high level, which I think in server meshing could hurt them, maybe, I think.
My issue is we need to get these core techs pushed out quickly. And if they are cutting out all these new locations from the roadmap and most of the vehicles from the roadmap, it appears based on all of the things that we've been hearing this year that they've really been focusing in on this area, along with obviously secretly focusing on Squadron 42, which is a whole nother fucking ball of wax, right? But if we're really dedicating most of our energy to this core tech, I would hope that it's because we're close.
Yes. Yeah.
I would agree.
Right. Like that's really important. And I personally, as someone who's put way more money than I should have into this game, am okay with them taking that risk if it means that they're going to actually deliver those things this year so we can see them. Even if it's in hey, here's a PTU meshing environment that's open to everyone. Please play in it if you're willing to be afraid. Right? Like let us test for you. We're volunteer testers from around the goddamn world who are happy to like suffer for you while we pay you for digital spaceships, right?
It's in my goddamn name.
Yeah, exactly. So
I just realized that.
my expectation is that is their plan, but that they'll slip at least one quarter. So Q2 is my guess on Pyro. Let's go ahead and talk about the next subject before we get too much more in the weeds on that there, though. Sure, this one. How important is ship docking to you? Enough. You got to start with this one.
Currently, it's on the lower end for me. I loved the Inside StarCitizen thing they were showing. I cannot wait to dock my Carrack by the docking collar, or to see some of our org members who have the larger ships, the 890s, your Polaris, the Idris the Kraken, the Idris that we have access to. Those are going to be so cool docked. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. Do I care about it nearly as much as iCache or server meshing or Pyro? No.
Wow.
It's a cool thing to be exploring, but without the player cap to exist that allows larger ships to enter, we're looking at the Idris requiring most of the current server to man in its entirety, right?
Yeah.
So why would I want that before I have more than 50 people on a server? But I do think it's cool. I think it's good to work for, and I think that they're separate teams. Nobody can do everything, and so if they have a team that has the time that's sort of stagnating, waiting for some other stuff to be done, I think it's a great use of time to explore the things.
And given the timing that they're developing it, it's already going to be iCache enabled now.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's not like it's creating anything extra crazy.
And it's cool to see, but I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, this is a core thing that we're missing. If they were doing any other gameplay loop, I think people would.
It's also enough butter for your guys' context. He's not a real astronaut. Also, he mostly flies smaller ships.
Hey,
so I could see why it wouldn't be a huge impact for you as someone who really prefers the small and medium ships.
Yeah.
If that
Okay.
Okay, Massa, go ahead.
I'm gonna put something in here that kind of does tie it into larger, more important systems.
Go ahead.
And that
Go ahead.
is the quanta system. Ship docking is going to be essential for larger implementations of the quanta system, which is definitely a key system. The quanta system is also one of the things that I think will by and large keep people interested, in the long term, because it will give the ability to like more dynamically generate missions. But I think docking does directly tie into it. May be a subsidiary of, but it does directly tie into major systems like iCache and like I said, the quanta system. Not directly, obviously, but it is kind of one of those like subsidiary parts that is kind of essential. Because and here's my logic with this: if you want Hull series ships trading in game, you need the quanta system for that, because right now the amount of cargo that those ships hold, even the Hull C, would completely overload any trading node you went to right now.
Yeah.
Again, so if you want those Hull series in game, you need iCache because you need the quanta system. And if you want the Hull series in game, you need the docking system. So again, like I just see the docking system as like as a small part of a larger whole, fitting in with the kind of more major tech.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that point of, I feel like maybe it came off saying it was so unimportant. It is important because it is required for a game loop of ship size and trading and whatnot. I don't think it's so huge right now. I think they showed it to us because they had the tech, but I don't think that it was like, wow, we've been... And even though I know, I guess I fly smaller ships, the Carrack is my largest ship, so I can still land on double zeros.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it's to the same level of importance for larger gameplay loops without the existence of iCache. If this is something that's coming out, in tandem with it, completely different story. It's awesome. Do it. You guys are doing, CIG's kicking ass and taking names with it.
And it did look awesome. Like, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
I watched it twice, like 2 or 3 times.
Tell me you didn't look out of the windows there and see like the 2 jabs docked to the station and just be like, oh my God.
Let me go ahead and give my perspective on it. I think that because we haven't done it ourselves yet, we're downplaying how significant it will be for day-to-day gameplay. I think that actually having that system in place, especially if it comes with ship-to-ship docking, like the Kruger for the Constellation series and stuff like that, it's going to have a very significant impact to a lot of players' day-to-day play experience, and it should allow us to do some really interesting things that will create emergent gameplay.
And sort of a juxtaposition of docking styles, I think ship-to-ship is more important than ship-to-station, personally.
Yeah,
I think that more can be done with ship-to-ship than it can be done with the ship-to-station.
And my hope is that that's what it's leading to.
I personally find ship-to-ship more important than ship-to-station, with or without iCache.
But you need ship-to-station from a technical perspective.
Yeah, it's
docking with a stationary object.
And it's essentially the simplest implementation of that system, so they can test it that way.
I just want to be able to refuel my Pisces from Eric already.
No, and I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. I'm excited for ship-to-ship docking, particularly as someone who wants to operate as the commander for a large group and has a lot of larger vehicles to hopefully be able to restock and distribute goods amongst lots of smaller ships, etc. Like that's a pretty important piece of gameplay, but it also covers a lot of those smaller vehicles experiences as well. But obviously, it's not more important than iCache because iCache is needed for it too, right? Like, so it's okay for us to be excited about something. It does not eliminate the excitement that we have for something else, right? That's important to understand. Given that the time frame that we're at right now, let's talk about the Crusader ships real quick.
Yay!
So
hold on, I got emotes for this.
Okay.
You got emotes.
Okay.
Crusader ships are gorgeous. I think they're one of my favorites of all times, and I can't wait to pick up the Star Runner and then the Ares afterwards. You best believe that I will be size 7 Gatling gunning people while burning in my seat. And if you think that
won't be on fire, it doesn't matter. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I am super excited for those ships. I really am a huge fan of the Crusader ships. I don't know if I'll be able to afford to pick them up again when they come out. For context, I actually bought the Mercury Star Runner as my first concept that I supported, but I don't have it anymore.
That is the exact same thing as the Star Runner. I went, oh my god, concepts are cool. The Star Runner is awesome, and then it very quickly became a Valkyrie, which then became the Carrack. Purchased, and well, obviously the Valkyrie was always available, and I grabbed the Carrack right before it dropped. So
yeah, so
anyway, my Star Runner has been long lost to other ships.
Go ahead, Masa.
I kind of was in a similar situation where like when the Carrack dropped, I reshuffled a bunch of stuff and ended up losing a bunch of my Mercury Star Runner and my Hercules upgrade path, essentially. And yeah, I basically I really worked hard to be able to kind of reshuffle my fleet in such a way that I get my Crusader ships back, because Crusader Industries, as my emotes kind of indicate, is my favorite ship manufacturer and my favorite art style. Every ship that they have thrown out there so far has just been exactly what I want in a ship, pretty much.
Yeah. They're the perfect mix of sleek but spaceshipy.
They're very aesthetically pleasing.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I love the little bit of asymmetry in them. So yeah, I worked really hard, and I now have my upgrade path back for my Star Runner. I have my upgrade path back for my C2, and I have my upgrade path back for my my Ares as well. And also, yes, I absolutely got the Inferno, because the Inferno was the right choice. Because size
Andy
7
thinks the Ion's the right choice, and he is wrong.
He is
What's wrong?
Your Ion is the incorrect choice, and it's only because you, Gandora, don't like rearming and refueling.
I hate rearming and refueling. It's the worst.
But you're ignoring. See, here's the thing. Here's the reason you're wrong. It's because the ballistic, size 7 ballistics will have such a high hull penetration capability for the size of the ship that's firing it, that you will be able to do stuff with an Inferno initially before they balance it out. I'm sure that they will probably balance it out eventually. That will just be game breaking. You'll be firing slugs at such a high velocity with such a high mass that you'll be punching holes through larger ships and disabling components where people will just be what the fuck just happened?
Okay.
And it'll be because you just hammered slugs through critical components.
Let me explain to you though why I did not buy the concept for either Ares. And that is because a ship that has a weapon that we cannot change, you will always wish that you could change it and never be able to. So I will buy it with in-game credits. It's not something I'm willing to spend actual money on. I think it's a really frustrating thing to have a vehicle that has components that you can't change. I'm speaking from experience, having owned the Glaive for many years and not being able to use it most of the time, because until recently, you couldn't change anything on it.
Yeah. I do remember you wanting to use that glaive very badly, and it never working for you.
I hear that.
It was a sad thing to see.
And to be fair, I've like fully adopted the Infrarunners mantra with this, and I'm not planning on like staying with that Inferno as like a long-term pledge for that particular like upgrade path. But in the meantime, that size 7 Gatling gun, especially when we get physicalized damage in, is going to wreck some serious shit.
Now,
but
now understand.
So is a side laser. That's still a big weapon. It's not like it's a pea shooter.
I want you guys to understand my perspective when it comes to the way I load out ships, though. Like, Nuff, Maso, I understand what you're saying, but you're operating under the assumption that you are somewhere near a location to restock or repair.
Yeah, that is fair.
I largely expect that I will go out into the black and want to be able to fight for 8 to 14 hours without having to go and restock. In order to do that, I need something that does not use ballistics. It's not possible. So for long range combat, I'm talking about going out into Vandal space and just hunting for hours with an understanding that I'll have less of an impact, but I'll be able to have more sustained combat and enjoy it, right? I won't be able to take down the same targets, but ideally I would be working in tandem with an Inferno so that I could take down the shields really quickly, and then you could go in and just destroy the hull.
And that is it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the
I wouldn't be
design
aiming for the hull. Specifically, I'd be aiming for the critical components that are exposed when the
exactly.
space goes down.
Knock off the engines, just like
there's also something to be said about you having a sort of, if you want to think of them in sort of more biological terms, a sort of stamina build versus a burst build.
Cheetah sprint.
And yeah, you get the cheetah sprint versus the human, and Gandhi's sort of got this human sweat to him where he will just keep going and going. And in the late game, and I don't mean late game as I know you've played thousands of hours, I mean like later on in the development cycle of this game period, you may very well see me being in the same play style. Today, currently, I don't mind hopping over to Hurston L1 to pick up some ammo because I get an extra 50 DPS from using a ballistic repeater over a laser repeater for part of my nose mounts. But in the long run, I think that there's a lot to be said about having a build that can just keep going and has the stamina. But I think at the same time too that
it'll be different
for just Ares series, that they are meant to work in tandem, and they have been sort of highlighted as these are two of the same pot.
Yeah,
the Ion comes in and takes down the shields, and maybe it snipes out a couple different, sensors or aspects of the ship that it can, and then the Ares comes in and does the pounding work. And both ships would be worse off without the other. So Gandhi, you're going to have to fly my wingman.
Fair enough. Though I should point out that, like, specifically what I'm referring to is like when we see these ships roll out, which I actually suspect we'll see the Ares probably by end of year. I'm just gonna go out there and say it. Just given all their work on Crusader ships and how kind of like single seat fighters are low hanging fruit.
It's the problem I see there is the fact that there's not really very good valid targets for them available. So they would actually have to bring out no. Like they need to bring out bigger ships.
No, see that's the thing. Like this is the thing. I think like the idea of the Ares as a capital ship killer is stupid. I think that is like really overlooking where these ships will really shine, and I think
it's going to do well against mediums and above.
Oh, absolutely!
It's going to be very poor against small nimble craft.
You want to take? Well, I don't even know. They've equated the maneuverability to a Vanguard, and I gotta say, it's pretty easy to keep fixed weapons on target in a Vanguard.
Yeah, the Vanguard is extremely easy.
I would hope that with a size 7 that it's less maneuverable than a Vanguard.
Well, and I think what you'd lose is the Ion has the lower fire rate, and I bet you'd see a lower. I would be very surprised if the Ion's laser had a fast fire rate. You're gonna
be like tap. That's like, especially on the Ion, right? You're going to be like 1 to 2 seconds between fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely a canon platform, not a repeater platform. And I think that you'd see with the Inferno, short magazine and spool up time.
Yeah.
I think that if you see both of those things, you have the ability of, it's just as maneuverable as your Vanguard, and the Vanguard
But you got to
is
stay
seal
on
clubbing.
target a lot longer.
But it doesn't matter because the Vanguard can miss a shot, and it doesn't matter. You get another one the next fifth of a second later. Oh, my next attrition shot came out or whatever.
But
Whereas
again,
if you only got if you only got a short amount of ammunition and you got a spool up time, it's capable. And in the hands of a good pilot, any ship will kill any ship. Well, okay, that's not true. An
Okay,
Ares.
let's
kill
let
anything.
Massa. You've been trying to say something though.
well, specifically, it's that first of all, I think initially, the Ares will be a fearsome predator against things, for example, like a caterpillar, because I think an Inferno will be able to basically swing in behind a caterpillar and just rip the engines right off of it. Like shields or no, like that size 7 ballistic will punch through and just destroy components of things like caterpillars and stuff like that. And that's where I think like the Inferno will be really ferocious.
It's gonna be extremely effective against large ships and medium ships with slower, less maneuverable pilots.
If we get it by the end of this year, when you're still looking at non-physicalized damage, that long, straight caterpillar sort of body, and you're just going to chew that thing up with that size 7 in one pass. I think you've hit the nail on the head.
I would not recommend releasing the Ares this year, given
I want to destroy people with it, so I will recommend
I understand,
it.
but I don't recommend releasing it until they have more things to do with it. I'm not saying that you can only do it against Idris, but like bringing in those Idris fights and the Ares together is going to really hype it a lot better. And I feel like marketing is targeting releasing it around that based on everything they put out for it now.
When's the last time we heard about that the Idris capture mission that was going to happen around Porto?
They basically dropped it and they haven't been talking about it again.
They haven't talked about it at all. But this is the thing. Like I honestly don't think that the Ares fighters will be that beneficial against the Idris initially. I think with physicalized components, different story, because you'll be able to use the Ares in more kind of surgical strikes to take out specific components, either turrets or engines or shield generators, etc. But that's kind of my other thing about the Ares. I think ultimately it'll be effective at like caterpillar-sized ships, constellation-sized ships, cutlass-sized ships, and specifically, it will be brutal when incorporated into a squadron.
For facts, I think times you hit that on the head.
And that's also why I think that the Inferno is going to be an absolutely brutal ship. Because if you pair that thing up where it's got the light fighter cover to keep the lighter targets off of it, and it basically could focus on just lining that size 7 up on a smaller ship, it is going to rip shit apart.
I will say that its firepower, given that we have like the Prowler, with the Prowler firepower and the Ion firepower are actually pretty comparable to each other. Given that you have one size 7 and the other one you've got 2 size 5s and 2 size 3s, that actually does probably add up to a fairly similar number on overall firepower.
Yes, this is kind of where I think a lot of people. This is actually one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about tonight. I just didn't really know how to phrase the topic. Is that one of the things that they've been talking about with respect to physicalized damage is the current state where 2 size 5s and a couple size 3s equals X amount of size 7s. That is not going to be how the game is, if what they're talking about with physicalized damage is any indication.
Well, mainly with armor in particular, being able to ablate away certain size rounds, basically.
Shields, I think, are still going to take damage from all. Have they mentioned that a bigger shield can negate a smaller ship's damage? I don't necessarily think they have.
No, they had a concept of a health pool for the shields across the board, I believe.
The way that I've interpreted talking about larger size guns is that it seems like it's almost an exponential effect against smaller size targets. So even for example with the with energy weapons, the energy levels released by a size 7 gun against a hull versus say 2 size 5s will be much larger than those 2 size 5s can output. And ultimately this is kind of speculation. This is me kind of interpreting what I've heard them say about that, but specifically with ballistics, when they've talked about projectile masses and velocities and how that will interact with hulls and armor, sure. I think really, like, I don't think it's going to be much. I don't think you're really going to be able to compare 2 size 5s versus a size 7 once that physicalized damage is in, especially with ballistics. And ultimately we have to see, but that's kind of my reason behind going for a ship with a size 7 gun versus a prowler with 2 size 5s, for example.
Personally, I feel like they're going to have to do a lot of balancing to keep that from being a really bad thing, right? Like, because you got to be really careful, especially considering that basically you look at a lot of other games like EVE Online, where basically you have the elite players who've been around forever and they've spent billions and they have these giant things. And then basically if you go into their space, you're just going to pop. And in a lot of ways, it's not enjoyable gameplay from my perspective.
Fair enough. That's fair.
And I want to make sure that we don't get to the point where you have that problem. I feel like we already have had that problem, and that actually a lot of the players who have been abusing Auroras and being dicks have been driven away from the game, because those people can turn around with their smaller ships and missile spam them, and they're bitchy about it. Right? Like, I am personally of the mindset that new players should be protected in where they start for a while so that they can actually learn to enjoy the game. And so I would like to see Stanton heavily policed and to be a fairly safe area, and to see Pyro when it comes out be this place that we try and move that kind of gameplay so that we can encourage it and have lots of it.
What would really, really encourage that safe space would be size 7 guns on the stations that just virtually pop anything that tries to get
anything that gets a crime stat getting popped with size 7s would be great.
I hear that. I hear what you're saying, and like, and honestly, that is kind of like concerning from a balance perspective to have them putting a size 7 gun, which is essentially a capital class gun, on a smaller ship, because like where the balance comes in with that sort of like exponentially larger damage potential in, for example, a capital class weapon is the fact that it is mounted on a capital ship. And those have their own balancing factors.
It's exactly. And so that's where I feel like it needs to be a little less maneuverable than a Vanguard. Sure, you said that, but like, go ahead.
Comes in as
I'll agree with
the
that.
Vanguard is tanky. I literally will have like, I need to change this key binding setting. In the middle of combat, I will stop and open up my menu and change a key bind. Because I'm in a Vanguard and I don't give a shit. Oh, you have 3 Mustangs, whatever, you won't get through my shields by the time I change this. From what I can see of the designs of the Crusader ships, with the exception of the Hercules, is we're looking at glass cannons. At least in the Ares form,
the Ares has medium-sized armor. It's intended to be a fairly heavily armored vehicle, actually.
Yeah, it's not going to be a glass cannon.
No,
like that. It should be a little bit weaker.
That's my concern with it. Is it's overall poorly balanced.
I think that might be changed later on, and that it might be a bit weaker.
I would hope
or that
so.
They might be in a way that it's strong.
You're like, I have one. I don't want it to go weak.
No, that's not it.
And a good point is raised here that it can't be a glass cannon in that it gets destroyed by any capital ship it has to go against. But we still need the balance aspect of
the maneuverability is enough to balance it.
Exactly. And that's why I hope it's not a glass cannon. And specifically, I hope it's not a glass cannon because every fucking ship they release is a glass cannon.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that lately? Have you ever noticed a trend there?
Well, yeah, they tend to just decrease the health pool as their solution. I'd rather less maneuverability so that I could still be tanky. Because we need brawlers, we need glass cannons, and we need rogues. Like, you have to have a mix of these nimble fighters that are kind of medium balance, high damage, low HP, and high HP, medium damage. Like, that's really important to have that balance.
I'm excited to use in cooperation with Gandora's Ion, assuming he gets one with an Eclipse. I think that is a dangerous combination. Long range shield removal, and then you just get hit with a big missile. Yeah, I think that would be a fun combo.
This is the other thing. Like, this is where, like, I think it is a misnomer to call it a capital ship killer. If you have one Ares, Inferno, or Ion, regardless, you're not taking down an Idris' shields.
No,
not way. You know, like you look at the complement. Look at the gun complement on an Idris or on a Nautilus, and it gives you an idea about like what sort of punishment these ships are designed to take. You know, like the Nautilus, for example, has what, like 6 size 7 guns on it, and that's a mine layer. Like, I'm sorry, but one Ion is gonna do shit all to an Idris.
Yeah, they are definitely meant to be in the realm of anti-capital ships. They follow the same suit as anti-ship missiles in the modern day, which is you use swarm. You know, these are more damage than if you used a swarm of even Vanguards, right?
Yes.
Against the capital ship. Exactly. But single-handedly, you're not doing. I mean, unless the capital ship is being piloted by Gandora. No, I'm kidding. You're not gonna do anything with it. It is not a capital ship.
I'm gonna have more rum.
I think it's a capital ship killer.
I'm a good pilot.
So is the Eclipse. The Eclipse isn't gonna one-shot any capital ships. It never will. It has no chance of it.
Absolutely.
But in a small group of them, it will. And I think the same thing is held true for a small group of Ions. Unless, of course, Gandora is a pilot.
I'm sorry, but the look on Gandora's face was just too good.
It was just too hard. One sec, where's Nut Butter? I need to hide him again. I'm mad.
Okay.
Okay, he's not here. Don't worry about it, guys. Everything's fine. Stop talking. You're gone. No.
We gotta be right back. I'll be right back. 1 second.
Okay, copy. Oh, goodness sakes. By the way, let me take this a moment. First of all, Zarak, I think you're right. Eventually, Terra would make a lot more sense as a starter zone. But for now, my expectation is, hey, we have a lot of people starting. Let's put them in places or give them the option. I would say, like, hey, pick one of the starting locations and say recommended for new players next to it and have that be extremely heavily policed. Say, make Microtech heavily policed. Make Crusader would be less policed based on the fact that they have Grimhex there. Clearly, they're not doing a good job policing. Like, the whole lore behind Crusader Industries is that they're like kind of namby-pamby and let people get away with too much shit because they don't want to be mean, right? So they're the least policed place in Stanton. But you look at Hurston, they don't even let anyone have weapons there. Hurston should be a perfect place for people to start because Hurston is going to be the most heavily policed location in the Stanton system.
It just needs to be not the buggiest city on the
no understood system. And I disagree with their choice to have us forced to start on a planet. I feel like you should be able to choose to start in orbit.
I agree.
Because it's a more difficult experience to start on a planet, and I feel like it was a bad choice to force all new players to start on a planet, despite the fact that they really want people to see the planets, right? Let people start in space. You can say you have to choose either Crusader in orbit, Crusader in orbit, Hurston in orbit or on planet, Microtech in orbit or on planet, or Area 18 in orbit or on planet, right? Those should be choices when you're first starting, or at least give them one choice that is not on a planet so they can start. This would help a lot of the people that are having a hard time playing the game altogether. And this is probably, Masso, to the point that you were making earlier, the reason a lot of people haven't been able to play since 3.9 is they can no longer select an orbital location as their starting point. So if they're unable to cope with the performance requirements of one of the planetary bodies, and they don't have a friend to help them escape if they're having trouble, they very likely will give up on the game before they can get into space, land somewhere. Maybe they don't even realize that if they land somewhere in space that they'll never have to worry about the stupid planets again. But like from the perspective of a new player, I feel like it was a serious mistake to not allow at least one location that was in space to start at, because those are the easiest places to learn the game from.
I agree with that, and I would just flat out just say that they should make it so that you, like, your spawning location, you start at like Bajini Point, Everest Harbor, or whatever the one around ArcCorp is. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Like because again, like learning to fly in Planet, when especially when you have these new splines in that take control of your freaking ship whenever you're not in them, which are not immediately visible if you're not an experienced player, like that is ridiculous for the new player experience. I've heard so many people, like I'm in a StarCitizen group on Facebook, and there are so many new players posting there constantly about, like, I took off for I lost control of my ship and I crashed. I took off, I lost control of my ship and I crashed. Like this is a regular occurrence, and it is because it is an appalling new player experience. And yes, you're right, Gandor. I get it. They're like, well, we want them to see the cities and all the things that we've crafted. Well, when you are learning to play the game and learning to fly a ship, that is not when you want to, that is not how you want to start them off.
Just think about all the free flights where they were at Port Olisar and they were still just like slamming into Port Olisar, right? That's a super easy experience, and it's still a struggle,
dude.
Right? It's not easy to the new player.
But with the new flight model
in stream and just watch people take off from Port Olisar and smash into shit.
Exactly.
My first step in free flight is to go land on a rest stop, because that way I won't get hit into by somebody who's just learning the controls.
I worry that the choice to make people go to those planets was emotionally driven, saying, why aren't people visiting our planets?
Yep.
They should go to them. And
they don't play the game
I would caution, I really want them to understand that they have created a negative experience in a large part by not suggesting the easiest place for new players to start.
Or if they're going to insist that people start on a planet, make it very obvious that they should set up their controls in Arena Commander Free Flight first.
True.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I learned. Like that is like.
But Arena Commander doesn't have. Arena Commander does not have anything that covers the takeoff and landing from a planet.
Doesn't matter. You at least get familiar with how your ship moves.
No, I feel like you both have points. Both have points made that it is different. I've got a significant amount of hours logged in StarCitizen. I've got a lot of hours logged in DCS. I've played a number of other flight games. I have a pretty good handle over my joystick and throttle. I fucking hate landing my carrick in the stupid hangars. They're not big enough.
But most new players probably aren't starting with a carrick.
Well, no, but I'm saying that I have a lot of experience, and there are aspects of landing that it pains me. And as a new player, my friend has not flown his ship yet because he doesn't want to be bothered trying to take off from inside of a hangar. And, I didn't call them yet. It's not super clear that, hey, make sure you call air traffic control before you leave, and then look for your spline, and then
Well, and a lot of people are like worried that what happens when I blow up, right? They're afraid that they're going to lose their ship that they paid real money for. Like, there's a lot of clarifications that need to be made to new players in that regard.
And I don't know, man. Like,
exceptionally outdated. I've had so many people in 3.10 in the salt box. I thought I lost all my stuff. You haven't lost the stuff off your ship in patches, but the information that people have is outdated, and now do it. And so
So
I agree. The Arena Commander is a great spot to get your flight controls set up in the aspect of, oh, I like using this hat switch for vertical, and I like to use this for okay. But I think that a combination would be best. I feel like there needs to be, those hangars that we've been able to visit for 6 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to take off from this.
That'd be amazing if it was just like on a playground area where you could open it up, practice taking off, and just.
You've got your takeoff, you've got your landing.
Yeah.
They've got gravity on them.
Yeah.
You get
especially
a little quick
if it was a local instance. Oh, that'd be amazing. You could just dick around.
That you don't need to affect the servers with, and that way you get your stuff set up, and then I'm done. If you're a streamer or a YouTuber who wants to grab some cinematography or you want to grab some pretty pictures, go there. But I think that would be a good thing to do because I haven't gone to my hangar in years.
Yeah. I still think that's overcomplicating things. Like you can say that going to Arena Commander in free flight doesn't help you with all the landing and taking off and stuff like that. Sure. But like that's where I started and just having a handle on your ship controls is probably, I would say, at least 70% of the difficulty of starting off as a new player. And if you have a handle on how your ship flies, then you can handle taking off and land. Like that's shit you can figure out, But if you are brand new to your ship controls and also having to figure out how the fuck to get out of this hangar, and then how the fuck to get off of this planet, like that is a whole nother curve of difficulty level.
So
what about this?
I agree.
Have a procedure, and we've had one since the dawn of time. Why don't we have an automated takeoff procedure for new players?
So here's the balance point, Maso, that I suggest. Add something into Arena Commander from a planet. We already have Star Marine on planet.
Okay,
fair enough. Just give us a mode that we can jump into that's on planet so we can practice low flying and stuff like that in a little bit more rapid iteration. Give us a moon or a planet with heavy gravity just so that mode is there. It would be fairly simple to implement, and it wouldn't really take much development time at all.
How do you,
if you could experience
indicate all the different key bindings?
How do you what?
Were you saying enough butter?
If you do theaters of war in a localized manner, right? You've got your takeoff, you've got your flight, you've got your in atmosphere, you've got your out of atmosphere.
Maybe Theaters of War is going to end up covering this, honestly, because if you did a private instance of Theaters of War, you could basically test anything
for everything. Your FPS with ships that you don't even own. Now you experience more extra fun stuff, but you get all those things taken care of, and then it's like, okay, now I can hop into the PU and keep flying.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. And so maybe we'll be covered with Theaters of War if it's implemented nicely, and that is something that keeps on coming up. But I don't want to jump into that. Ball of wax tonight.
Theaters of War.
Somewhere in Austin, Texas. I think.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of things to go there. I agree with Zarak, one of our viewers. We need a tutorial. We need an in-lore way to introduce new players, and it has to happen at some point before we can really say that we're out of alpha and into beta. I feel like it's absolutely critical to have that in the experience before we get there. But I do see that coming after most of this, especially all the, like, they got to put a stick in the sand and say the flight model is good enough. We're not going to change it for a year before they're going to do that. Yeah.
Because the controls are the big thing in doing any sort of tutorial. You have to have, like, and this is the thing, they did the tutorial before. Do you guys remember that? Where they did, like, they tried to do the tutorial. I think it was pre 3.0.
Yeah, it was in the 2.6 era. I never got to play it. I saw some videos of it. I saw videos.
Tutorials are silly people.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Like, it was good if you were a player who's been playing the game and knew how to play. But, like, if you were a new player, it wasn't much of a tutorial. It was like how to make yourself feel like you're inadequate.
There you go. Phase. All right, so guys, I think we've really hashed out a lot more elements in StarCitizen. We could keep on going, but I think we've hit it pretty hard. And I would like to talk about Cyberpunk for just a little bit. You guys okay with a boop, 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 boop transition?
Sure. I don't know much about it except for that I really want to play it.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like Cyberpunk just looks like beauty that I'm not able to touch yet.
All right. So
I played a lot of Shadowrun RPG, went through high school and stuff like that, and I've been like reading up on the most recent edition as well. And yeah, Cyberpunk and Shadowrun are they're kind of in the same vein, so I'm pretty excited.
So I guess that I just had 2 questions for Cyberpunk. I was going to go to this one before we hit DualUniverse, because there's not a lot to talk about it, but I did want to update folks. There was news on it. How do you feel about the delay on release so far?
We're StarCitizen players.
Yeah. Did it surprise you guys?
The second delay, yes, it did kind of surprise me, but also, like CD Projekt Red is a fucking fantastic studio. They have produced like some of the best games I think ever. Like Witcher 3, I will just throw that out there as being one of the best games ever. So if they want some more time to make potentially the next best game ever, take it, guys. Like I said, I mean, we're StarCitizen players. We're used to waiting. I'll wait for something better.
I think that they fall into the realm of a development company that goes, we need to take a little bit more time. And you sort of go, yeah, I wanted to play it now. But you know deep down
that they're doing it right.
It's better. You're going to get it and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I waited on this. We have one of those in DCS, a third-party dev company that spent 4 years making one airplane. They did 2 years, and then they said, no, this doesn't look great. And they started from the beginning, and everybody was all pissy. And it is just a gorgeous. Everybody, I don't think anybody hates it, else than the fact that it's too good.
Yeah. So for me, I wasn't really terribly surprised, particularly given COVID and the fact that it's a more traditional studio. I was expecting it to impact them more. I was confused when I tried to read the latest broadcast from their CEO, because it kind of felt to me like he was on some really weird drugs. I was reading the thing, and it was just like, it was like tongue twisters and really strange. And like,
do you think it was a translation issue?
It just worked.
I don't know. I felt like I was getting trolled by someone, but I'm pretty sure it was the actual broadcast. Now, for me, I don't mind that it's delayed. Honestly, I'm a little bit glad, but it's not really because of anything real. It's just because I won't be able to play very many video games until November anyways. So I feel like I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not going to miss that train too, right? Because like right now, we'll talk about DualUniverse in a little bit. I really wish I could play DualUniverse, but I'm selling my goddamn house right now, and I can only play games like once a week instead of the regular 5 days a week kind of thing. It's really been difficult. And I'm glad that they're taking the time. The studio historically has done amazing work. There's one thing that I personally am very disappointed about, and that's them removing multiplayer until 2021.
I can see why, but this isn't the first time a large sandbox, not a sandbox in the true sense, but this sort of sandboxed game has had the same thing. Because remember, GTA did that. GTA 5 Online is one of the most successful games of all time now.
Yeah,
but it didn't exist, and it let them take it to the next level. I think that they were able to produce a multiplayer content. That how long has Rockstar been milking GTA? And it's still I haven't played in a while, but
they've only just announced a sequel. Like,
did they? The last thing I heard was they announced that GTA 5 would be coming for the next generation consoles, and everybody was like, "Well, we knew that, but thank you."
Oh, okay. I misunderstood that then. I thought they were releasing their sequel for the next generation.
They put their logo up and everybody was like GTA 6, and they're like, it's GTA 5 all over again.
For me,
but I think that as long as it comes out well, I think that the delay between the single player and the multiplayer will be quickly forgotten.
I guess one thing for me, and you guys got to understand, if I am trapped on the ground, and particularly in third person, I get uncomfortable and bored. So
You get bored in third person. Hey, interesting.
I don't enjoy third person. So if there is a first person, I'll probably really like the game a lot more. But in particular for me, it looked like there were no spaceships or even avionics of any kind. So I'm concerned that I won't really get into it, but I know that when it's in a multiplayer environment, I'll enjoy it more. If it's primarily an FPS game in like third person, I probably won't like it at all.
I thought it was first person. Am I wrong?
I've seen a lot of third person so far.
The thing that we saw from them with the trailer showed first person only.
Okay.
Any cinematic.
Okay.
God,
So-
that word is just not
I have to
possible.
point this out. I have to point this out here, and this will like probably sully me in the eyes of whoever's watching here. But in a lot of cases,
I'll watch the viewers go down. Go ahead.
I find third person more immersive than first person
So
because, yeah, because like okay, and here's my logic here. Like when I am here in the meat space, I have multiple other senses to kind of
space.
convey what is going on around me. You know, like I have, you know, but in a video game, you do not have that. You know, like if you are first person, you don't have the sense of touch. You can't feel wind. You can't smell. You can't, you know, like oftentimes your hearing is much like really dumbed down to what it is when you are, you know, like what you are in the meat space, to reuse that.
There you
I
go.
love
You are
You guys
now
have never heard the term
Masocast
meat
of Meat
space?
Space.
Oh,
I
man.
am replacing IRL with MSL for Meat Space Life.
You guys need to play some Shadowrun, man. Like meat space is a common terminology there.
There you go. Okay. So
I can agree with you.
But anyways, what I'm gonna say is like third person kind of gives you, in my opinion, gives you kind of like some of the senses that you can't get, basically staring at a monitor in first person. So like that's the way I kind of interpret third person. It's the ability to rapidly move your head, rapidly move your eyes, hear, feel, things like that. So that's what third person kind of does for me. Feel what your body is doing, where it is, where it's located, stuff like that. That's why third person to me feels more immersive, because the way I play it is kind of more of like a conglomeration of all of my character's senses.
I think that
And-
also comes down to how well different different senses are portrayed by the game itself. I've had no issues with not feeling immersed in Tarkov, especially when I first started playing. Getting shot at was like recoiling. I'm scared. I had a friend lose it while we were playing because we were getting shot at, and it was just freaking him out too much. And it feels very realistic. But you mentioned that the noise seems dumbed down a lot in first persons, and in Tarkov, noise is a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that it's true. Playing Call of Duty first person, or pick a generic first person shooter. Nah, whatever. Yeah, that's first person. Oh, I bumped into something. Oh, there's gunshots. Whatever. But when they're really well done, like Tarkov, Squad, and some of the other more military style FPS games that bring in what it sort of feels like to get shot at, I think it's better done. But I can agree that there are also times where there's parts of a first person game where it's, oh, what the hell am I stuck on?
Yeah.
Realistically, you know what you're stuck on. And in the third person game, you have a pretty good idea of what you're stuck on because you can typically see it. But in the first person game, it's oh, there's a box down there that I didn't see.
Exactly.
I think
exactly.
I think both are
there's
perfectly
something-
valid. But personally, I feel more immersed in a first person game than I ever am in a third person game. And I have lots of friends who experience it the opposite way.
Yeah.
But I, particularly since becoming a professional streamer, I have realized, because I keep on getting pushed to play a lot of different games, I had to start really understanding myself and what made me enjoy a game versus what made me not enjoy a game. In the past, I could really fixate on a very small number of titles and just play those in my time playing without really being bombarded with a lot of other options. But as like while I'm streaming each time, since I do like 8-hour sessions regularly, I get bombarded by viewers with 10 to 15 titles in a single night that they really want me to try out. And I had to really internalize and understand, why is it that certain titles, even though they may thematically really be in the direction that I normally like, why do I not enjoy them? And there, for me, there's two things that I look for. One is I like first-person games, and I hate it when I feel trapped on one planet. Like, I'm able to enjoy... there's another thing, which is if it's present, I hate it. But if it's in the future or the past, I love it. Anything that feels like super overly grounded in reality, kind of... It's too easy for me to lose my immersion because very small mistakes will ruin it.
What about sort of current time frame but an alternate reality?
I'm able to enjoy those. Those are like zombie flicks and things like that, which basically, it's technically the current time frame, but there's like some huge twist on reality.
But
those can be really fun.
Like you're playing real life. It's not.
Yeah. Well, like I think some of the Fallout games kind of fall into that line too, right? Like, I love
Fallout
those.
are awesome because they took the 1950s design language and yeeted that into the future.
Yeah. But yeah,
So-
that's okay. We're getting a little sidetracked here. What's up, Massa?
I mean, a little
Cyberpunk.
bit, but like,
Cyberpunk.
is it the concept of the concepts of the game that like make you feel immersed, or is it the like I don't know. I guess the visuals.
It's
I don't
being
know.
the character for me. So it's the same reason that for me, I much prefer a virtual reality experience over anything else.
It's being invested in a game where you can die as your main character. It's being invested in the death of your character for more reasons than just, oh, I'm dead. Oh, I've got to
Yeah,
respawn.
so,
Oh, I've got to try it again. To me,
like,
that's
you're-
what it is. If I feel like I can lose something in the game, I become invested, which I then become more immersed in.
Sure. Okay, that's a factor for sure.
But the
But,
first
like,
person
for
versus
example-
third person, I don't know that necessarily. You can have that investment in both
Right.
ways.
Yeah.
I've had some great third-person games, and I've had some great first-person games, and I've had horrible of both. For only from the immersion standpoint.
Well, think about this one. Okay, so let's say that you're in a game and you fall off a cliff. Which one is more likely to make your stomach lurch? First person or third person? For me, it's definitely first person.
Skyrim.
I'd agree with that.
No,
And
I think the first person does.
Those types of immersion where I forget that it's not me is something that's really key for me enjoying a game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like to go and do things that I can't do in real life in video games, which is the other reason that like I'm a little worried that I won't enjoy Cyberpunk, because I can go look like an idiot and go downtown and trade drugs if I really want to. So if that's the primary gameplay, in the game, I'll lose interest really quickly. But as long as I'm doing things I can't do in real life and it's in first person, I'll probably get super immersed, especially if there's really good storytelling.
And see, that's where third person really comes through for me. Like, for example, like I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn right now.
Oh, such a
and it really is. Like, it's a great game. And like it's a third person game, and watching the character, watching her like climb a cliff face, like I know I absolutely can't. Like that adds to the immersion and like and the like the bonding with the character, because then I start to feel more like this powerful, athletic kind of like, like character, right?
Yeah.
And if it's first person and I don't really see that, like I don't get that immersion as much. Whereas like when I'm watching her like, grab a hold and like just chuck herself up to the next hold and then like flip up, stuff like that. Like that's like I get more immersion out of that than I do out of being in first person.
I think a big advantage in third person is that you can do a lot better job doing storytelling, because you can, first of all, you can have dialogue for the main character. You can have a lot of these things without breaking immersion, because it's understood that you're not that character.
Well, and there's
and that's
just sort of,
go ahead.
Just to sort of bridge the gap, and I'm just because we mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn, I can remember this now. Not spoilers here, but there is a point in time where you get to a very, very, very tall tower.
Yeah,
and it was third person, and I was terrified of falling off of it. I was like, didn't like that. I was like,
I remember that tower. I remember that tower. So they still manage it.
Awesome. So it's definitely capable, and I think that third person, the benefit that Masso you're sort of bringing towards here is a visual representation of extra senses that can be done in third person, maybe more consistently. We've all seen first person games really knock it out of this park with getting some extra levels of sense that aren't just visual brought across.
Holy shit. Hey guys,
hey,
Red Lear, thank you so much. Everyone from Red Lear's show. Holy shit. That's a lot of people. We're talking about I forgot now, because that's a bigger Cyberpunk, but right now we're talking we're talking about the differences between immersion in games in first person and third person. And it looks like Masocast is in the boat that he prefers third person games for immersion.
No. Okay. Let me clarify. Let me clarify here. Like, mainly, I want hybridization. Like, I want the ability to experience a game in first person or third person, because I feel like third person kind of sometimes more accurately illustrates the senses that a physical body has, like touch, scent, hearing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yes, like in a lot of cases, I love third person for immersion.
I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly that the best part, any visual aspect of the game, I think that really sends it home, for me at least, is I'm in first person and I'm walking up this hilltop to this great vista, and I see the vista, and it's like, wow, that's a cool vista. And the camera sort of transitions to the third person, and now I'm like, this is what it's like to be in the vista. I can now imagine the wind, the snow that's getting kicked up, what the shade is like around me. Is it hot? Is it cold? Between the two things, then you hit I have no way to make your human body cold in a video game yet, but I can remind you what it feels like with third person. But then when you're running around shooting people, you want it in first person because you don't live back up over there.
Or, for example, like landing in StarCitizen, I like doing that in third person. Not necessarily because it's easier and you can see where your ship is, but just because I fucking love seeing the ship come in, all the thrusters firing and the dust flying out from the pad and stuff like that. Like, that is immersion to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's something you don't get when you're sitting in the cockpit.
I guess so. For me to immerse myself in the character versus to immerse myself in the story, right? So for storytelling, the ability to have cinematic camera movements and to not be forced to be tied to the first person perspective has some serious advantages. But what I was describing was when I'm identifying a game that I know I will really get into, there's a tendency to need it to be in the first person as one of the criteria, especially for longer term gameplay.
And that's where, like, I agree with you. And like Nuff Butter was saying earlier, or actually, no, I think it was Zarakish who was saying it, or somebody in the chat was saying earlier, like, how some of the most butt clenching moments he's ever had in video games was in like Half-Life 1 when you're doing some of the jumping puzzles from first person perspective. Oh my god, you're totally right. Like, those sorts of high altitude jumping spatial kind of puzzles are incredibly immersive in the first person, because you feel like you're that person balanced out on a tiny ass little iron girder out into the middle of the void. And that is something you absolutely don't get in in third person perspective, which is why I personally like the ability to switch between both equally, because that's how I maximize my immersion.
Okay. Now it makes sense. I like the ones that basically pull you out in cinematics, so you see from a third person perspective during a cinematic experience, but then pull you in. And I think there was I don't know if it's called Far Cry. There was like a zombie one where you were like doing a lot of parkour and roof jumping.
Dying Light.
Dying Light did an amazing job kind of like pulling it out into a third person during the cinematics to tell story, but then it would zoom into your first person, and it just did a killer job. That's giving you awesome. That sense of like motion and really giving you that stuff that I was describing earlier where you get that heart pumping action, but also then driving into the third person to tell the story. So yeah,
we kind of like diverted from
Well, I think the big thing is with Cyberpunk that we're saying, first of all, most of us are okay with the fact that multiplayer has been delayed until 2021. And we were a little bit surprised by the second delay for the game release to November. But collectively, we were pretty comfortable with the delay given the performance of this particular game developer so far. We expect that it's not being squandered, right?
No.
I think we have some different standpoint from non-StarCitizen players in the fact that we expect things to get delayed because we like to have nice and low expectations.
No, that makes sense. And given that we had a bunch of people come in, I do want to make sure that they know who each of us is. Nuff Butter is another streamer, a member of the Super Friends. He's not a real astronaut.
Not a real streamer either.
No, but he streams every once in a while. But he's an amazing member of the Super Friends group, and he has volunteered to just have this very long discussion about various sci-fi topics today, and I really appreciate it. And then we've got Massocast, who
also not a real streamer
or astronaut.
But he is of the meat space, and that's what I put above your name. And I am Gandora Olap, your hairy and glorious host. So I really appreciate you being here. Red Lear, if you're still here, thanks again for the raid. And I really hope you had an amazing show. And anyone who has a question for the panel, we were just talking about Cyberpunk. We're going to be jumping in to talk a little bit about DualUniverse. If you have any questions related to StarCitizen, DualUniverse, Cyberpunk, regular sci-fi topics or actual space topics, we have been discussing those fairly freely. We just wrapped up talking about StarCitizen in pretty deep depth. I recommend checking out the VOD, or if you're watching this on YouTube now in the future, then I guess you already saw it, and sorry to interrupt your experience.
We can put that out.
Yeah. To the future use, I'm sorry, this is slightly inconvenient, but to everyone else, I hope that helps you understand where we are in the show. Now, let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit here to talk about
DualUniverse.
Let's start with, hey, what do you know about DualUniverse? And I'll take Maso, because Nuff just shook his head in fear.
Yeah, basically that. In fact, I actually jumped into Dr. Drones' stream just before we started, and I was like, the fuck is up with this game? Like, I've heard so much about it. I've heard, like, people saying, like, oh, StarCitizen should be scared, and then I, like, look at it, and I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Space engineer should be scared from what I've
seen. Space engineers should be scared.
Like, this is not the same kind of game as StarCitizen, and I don't understand why I've been hearing so much stuff about like how DualUniverse is gonna kill every other space game, because like it's not. But like after watching it for a bit, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. This is basically Minecraft with spaceships.
It seems like a if you were making Space Engineers in 2020 and you had 4-6 years of a tech increase,
Yeah.
it seems like it. The building mechanics. I want to say I was watching Sergeant Tickle's stream because you were hosting it, Gandhi, just before we went live. And this is just Space Engineers, but with slightly different visuals and probably a much larger scope.
Yeah, it's definitely a Space Engineers MMO, just like Q-Pan says.
Space Engineers is like Minecraft. It is more akin to Minecraft, with I think DualUniverse being more of an MMO feel
format,
and an extrapolation upon what it could be. But it and Star Citizen are different games. It is not anywhere akin to the Star Citizen ED realm.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be interested in playing it though. Still,
I hadn't done any research about DualUniverse. I'd only ever kind of like heard people talking about like, oh, when DualUniverse comes out, you know, like, oh my God, you know, and so that was kind of one of the reasons why when I saw it for the first time in somebody's stream, I was like, huh, I don't get it.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So I didn't think it was the DualUniverse everyone was talking about at first. I was like, this is not right, is it?
For those of you who don't know, though, we finally entered open beta on the 27th of August, which was a huge milestone for DualUniverse. And that's why we're starting to see it streamed and played openly. For those who don't know, it has been being played in a closed, not allowed to stream or share beta for a really long time. So those of us who've seen it in the meantime, it's only been through like leak sources and stuff. So I've been keeping an eye on it, seeing gameplay and everything, but just like Elite Dangerous getting space legs is not going to kill Star Citizen, and just like Star Citizen getting another solar system isn't going to kill Elite Dangerous. I really want to be clear that the video gaming like niche that we're covering has so much room for growth that we don't have to be afraid of our games being destroyed just because another game came out, because there's a tendency for them to be different enough that you can enjoy them both.
Absolutely.
And how many times do people in the same realm play every version of the game or that they can access to? I mean, there are very few people that are like, no, I'm only going to play this one game. You know, it's like, oh, this week I want to play this game, but today doesn't feel like I want all that realism. But you know, maybe I want
honestly,
to
like, let's talk about No Man's Sky, right? No Man's Sky, it has grown the market for space games. It has not shrunk it. It has taken people who would not have been comfortable making that leap to a hardcore flight thing over. The same way that me playing lots and lots of Star Citizen will eventually lead me to be brave enough to play DCS. I'm not quite there yet. I'm sorry, Enough Butter. Right?
One day I will teach you how to
but eventually that's going to happen, because I'm going to get to a point where I'm actually brave enough to do it. And it wouldn't happen without these intermediary games. It doesn't mean that I still won't play Star Citizen. Mm-hmm. Right? But like Star Citizen has also made it so that because I was protecting a spaceship, I'm willing to pull a gun up and shoot people. And now I'm actually getting better at FPS games. Right? So now I'm actually interested in Tarkov. Everyone's told me for years, you would hate Tarkov, which of course enrages the fuck out of me and makes me want to play it just to prove you wrong, Enough Butter. But
you do it, Andy.
Yeah, I'm just like, whoa, if I had the money to throw down right now just to prove you wrong, Enough Butter. But I don't.
If only.
If only. God, I don't know. I just like, when you tell me I wouldn't like doing something, it just, gets me.
This is how you get Gandor to do anything.
Gets me in my jellies. It's all.
Dude, to buy me an Ares.
If you guys,
Ares.
Yeah. If you don't know this trick, guys, like when you meet an engineer, like go into a room of engineers with a problem that you are having trouble solving, and just tell them it's impossible and to give up, and then walk out.
Yeah.
The next day, you'll have like a 20-page article proving you wrong with all the ways you can do it, and you'll be like, oh wow, thank you, you're right. And yeah, exactly, like that's the way to do it. It's very evil.
So Eric, if you want to fly the A10, you let me know, buddy.
Red Layer, you wouldn't like me prancing around in the nudes? Which game? Which game do you? I play with people in Final Fantasy 14.
I feel like
everyone's in the
in your
nudes.
house with that comment.
I'm like, it's all good, Red Layer. I'm old enough. I just don't care. Oh, IRL, it's all good, man. We can hang. I'm past that point. There was a point in my life I would have been really uncomfortable, but at this point, I don't care anymore. You want to hang out in the nudes? It's fine, bruh. It's fine. You're like, here, you want to see? You want to see just a little bit? We were talking about how I might need to move my stream over to Pornhub. The other day, I was like, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired of having to restrict what I talk about. We have such good conversations in the Super Friends, but I'm like, yeah, this wouldn't fly on Twitch. It's like that's what we were talking about.
Like, remember my Steam name? I can help you out.
Yeah. I didn't know it was an accurate Steam name.
You think I'm a liar? I'm hurt.
I do think you're a liar, but like in a cute kind of way. Okay, so let's see. So for DualUniverse, I would say the overall assessment is like if you made Space Engineers into an MMO, that you'd be about right. I think there's a couple really exciting things about this game, though, that I'd like to briefly cover. Since I've been following it for a few years. First of all the ships are built by players. And especially if this means I don't have to build a ship and I can find people who are super excited about building ships and have them sell me their ship design, I think that's exciting and fun. It's a cool way to like have an in-game economy of ships and to have specialization of that kind. And I feel like it's going to drive a new kind of player into the realm of space games that has been a little bit underserved in MMO ways so far. But as someone who plays games largely for their visual appeal, I think I'm with you, Masso, on it's graphically too voxel based for me to get some of the jelly feels that I get while playing a game like StarCitizen. And that's where I feel like for a pretty long time, at least, that will be a big differentiator. When I want to go and take pictures in space, I wouldn't choose to do it in a voxel-based engine. I would choose to do it in something that had a lot more fleshed out art.
Yeah. Though that said, like I should mention that I have played the shit out of Minecraft in like various Minecraft mods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like I'm capable of enjoying games with like lower kind of fidelity graphics, with enjoyable kind of like builder gameplay.
The builder is really
but yeah, you're right. It's like it's definitely a different experience.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It is absolutely. It's something that shocked me when I saw DualUniverse because that was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, I think it was sort of hyped up in a weird way, and people said, "Oh, it's the StarCitizen killer," but it's not. If it kills any game, it kills Space Engineers just because it's newer, and not because it's necessarily innately better from some ground standpoint, or because the devs are so much better. It's got newer tech to it, and it'll run better.
Theoretically, it could still drive more sales of Space Engineers. Given
I think it could coexist, as most games would end up doing, because people want both.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great fun to have a bunch of people in DualUniverse messing around, making some big, stupid-looking, phallic-shaped ship with turrets everywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
is real.
I could totally see the Super Friends doing that.
Oh,
so
dude,
much so that happens in the near future. I'm expecting payment.
The only reason I haven't been able to play it right now is it requires a subscription. And I'm not in a position this month, at least, while I'm doing the move, to actually sit down and dedicate enough time to justify picking up another subscription-based game. Otherwise,
start to report a subscription-based game. So.
Otherwise, I would totally be down to dive in on it. But I just don't have the time right now for it. I'm really excited about it. I wish that it had lined up better with my schedule, but that's not their fault. I'm glad that they're finally lifting the black veil of darkness on the game, though, because I feel like they kept it up too long, personally, given how far along they've been for the last 2 years.
Their timing works out well in the realm of the space game. Is you're sort of in a minimum state of Star Citizen is. We had our new patch, but there wasn't anything.
Yeah. So it's like most people aren't playing that.
Star Citizen. People aren't. Elite Dangerous it's got stuff coming in the future. It's got stuff now, but it's not there. So people want that. So they actually did a really good job.
Space Engineers and Empyrean as well, like, are probably at the point where they're getting diminishing returns on their most recent patches too. So you have a point. Like, they probably timed it very well from the perspective, and it has to be the case given that we're seeing tons of streamers actually picking it up and playing it right now. So they did a good job. That we're talking about.
All channels are playing it right now, except for one. I would say that
they did a good job on the timing, just not for me personally.
No, not for me either, because like
horrible for all.
Because like as somebody who is a Minecraft fan and a Star Citizen fan, I'm just like I'm not convinced enough from what I've seen of the gameplay so far to be willing to subscribe.
Yeah, even though it's a fairly cheap subscription at only $6.99.
Doesn't matter. It's
just they can't convince me to. Yeah, and that was the same thing, right? Like, but I feel like the problem is that every time I've tried to pull up someone's stream, I haven't really seen them doing anything.
Yeah.
I mean, people are still figuring out what you can do. Though.
Yeah,
sure. It's sort of a trial period for most people.
And I get that can be fun when you're the person playing it. So, like, to be fair, to be fair here, like I'm sure that like watching the game is probably not as fun and interesting as playing the game.
Yeah.
But
I'm with you, Massa, and I've been trying to watch folks that normally I play Star Citizen with who are playing it, just so I can try and glean like what is happening.
Like a lot of people actually just go to the Star Citizen channel right now and look at the total viewer count. We're like 1,000 viewers down from a normal Thursday.
Yeah.
At least.
But this is pretty normal, and we talked about this earlier. We're in between patches. We usually hit a slump about like for the month or two before, and that's why more regular updates from Star Citizen is a better way to keep activity up on it. Smaller iterations that come out regularly helps to keep things alive, really. But also things like we were talking about, like Quanta and stuff, where it makes the gameplay change as you're playing it and makes it more engaging. Like we were talking about iCache for a really long time. That kind of stuff allows us to have gameplay that changes from session to session in a more interesting way, so that we're creating our own kind of scenarios and stuff, knowing that we have time to disable instead of just exploding the character means I'm much more likely to put a bunch of guns that I got from clearing bunkers inside it, and it's going to make it a lot more interesting pulling out my character. But then that means, hey, now we need a way to repair, right? There's all these things that we were talking about earlier that are needed to really keep the gameplay interesting beyond just saying, oh, there's a new system, go check it out, or here's the new flight model, practice it, right? And that's a big part of it.
I think DualUniverse might have been, I want to say, damaged in sort of initial exposure that I've mentioned. Massa, you've mentioned it, and I'm sure other people have experienced it too, from the community being, or it's going to destroy Star Citizen, and sort of looking for a way to damage the idea of Star Citizen, as people so much have done with that game. And that we expected to, we were like, oh my god, these people say it's going to be so great, it's going to kill Star Citizen. Oh, this is just Space Engineers. It's cool. And I think that if they had a less so pushed idea from the user base that it was going to be this Star Citizen killer, I think we all would have looked at it and been like, oh, that's going to be cool. I'd be so fun to do with friends. Could hang out. We could mess about. Blah, blah. But we first went in there and going, where are the amazing visuals?
You know what though? Like
beautiful scenery that I could look at.
This is a regular thing in pretty much any game I've played. Like, for example, like way back when I was playing WoW, every MMO that came out after WoW, all the dialogues.
Everyone's like,
surrounding that
"Wow,
new
killer!"
MMO, WoW killer, exactly.
Yeah,
You know, oh, this
it's
is gonna kill WoW for sure, and guess what? It never did. You know,
and I want to bring up another psychological thing specifically with Star Citizen that we don't see as much with other games, and that is a lot of people have invested a shit ton in this game. Right? A lot of people have bought a lot more ship than they expected they would buy. So whenever they see something that has elements that they wanted to see in Star Citizen already, they get really afraid. Let me give the specific example. When Elite Dangerous announced Space Legs right after the sale, where a bunch of our Super Friends members bought very expensive ships, they lost their shit. Okay? And they were like, oh my god, they're gonna have Space Legs in Elite Dangerous. It's gonna ruin everything, right? And it's people have a lot invested in something, they will even irrationally defend that thing. And it's something that we as Star Citizen players and backers have to be very careful and cognizant of, right?
Yeah.
It's something we have to understand about the psychology of investing in something so much that you would willingly do something you normally wouldn't do just because you're not willing to face proof that you made a mistake. And if we don't admit that to ourselves, we can't prevent ourselves from making that mistake when the time comes. And so it's just something, being in this sphere, particularly being a professional streamer of this game, I have to be really clear that that's important. And it's something that does affect anyone who has invested in anything, let alone in Star Citizen to any significant extent. And that's still okay. It's okay that we are vested, we have an interest in its success, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy other things. Some people fall trapped to the idea that if they're playing DualUniverse because they're not enjoying Star Citizen, that they're cheating on the game.
Yeah. Well, and this ties into the conversation that we had touched on earlier, which was just that you will play multiple games, and several games can take up the same. Even, I mean, when we talk about the realm of sort of space sandbox games, they aren't the same game, but ED and Star Citizen are the most closely aligned for what the visuals are, very high quality visuals, how the flight works, sort of what you can do from a commerce standpoint, but they are still significantly different games. Yeah. ED always has been, and this is back to the original Elite Dangerous, the original one back from when it was still on Sega. Oh boy, my knowledge is bad. But basically, when they released the original version of it,
doesn't matter. You're way too young to actually remember Sega.
Well, you ever had a Sega?
I remember Sega.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm not too young.
Old.
We're old people.
No, but whatever program they released it on, they basically said we didn't make a full one-to-one, well, not one-to-one, but a full recreation of the galaxy because we assumed that people would think it wasn't real. Which is a funny thing that I heard about when they were like, yeah, it's just, we didn't think that people would believe it and they would think that we're lying, so we didn't do it. But it is at its core the ability to explore the universe from your ship, and not so much the Star Citizen one, which is more of you are experiencing, I don't want to say experiencing life. It sounds really loserish, but it also doesn't fit the bill. But there's more personal interaction between players in Star Citizen than there ever was intended to be in Elite Dangerous. And Elite Dangerous does some things very well, and Star Citizen does some other things very well. But so they all exist at the same time. There is no true killer of a game.
Yeah.
I mean, there can be, but not in the sense that, this game's going to come and kill it, or, I can't play Star Citizen, or I can't play Elite Dangerous or DualUniverse because I should be playing Star Citizen because I backed it, or oh my god, I spent so much money on StarCitizen, and then the game that I want is going to come from Elite Dangerous for cheaper, because it won't. You know what you wanted when you bought it, and it'll come.
Each game has its strong points, right? And to kind of wrap up the topic of Space Lays on Elite Dangerous, since we brought it up, it's a similar thing to what we were saying at the beginning of this show, where, hey, generally speaking, this cast has a very wide amount of knowledge, but a low depth on most of the topics. Sometimes we hit these topics that we're surprisingly deep on, but for the most part, it's a mile wide and an inch deep, and we're very excited to talk to you to that inch. And once we get beyond that inch, we'll let you know. And that's where you as the viewers have done a really great job filling in some of the blanks, like, it was a fungus, not a bacteria, that could consume the radioactive materials from the elephant's foot, right? And it's all good, and it's going to live forever on YouTube that we were all dum-dums. But that's okay.
I gotta say, though, everybody who just tuned in is going to, like, analyze that last sentence you just said and been like, what the fuck?
Yeah. How is that related to StarCitizen?
Fungus consuming radiation on an elephant's foot?
This is, for those of you who don't know, this is the first episode of a new segment on my show. This is Welcome to the Future. This is the very first experience of it. And by that respect, if you have any feedback whatsoever, feel free to send it to us. If you're looking to get on this show in the future, be sure to join the Discord, ping me. I'll get you into the panel for it. And I'm looking to do this on a somewhat regular basis every couple weeks, so that we can talk about the latest that's going in the sci-fi and actual space areas. Essentially, though, Elite Dangerous does things really well at a very low level of fidelity.
It's like our knowledge,
right? They execute things with very few bugs, and they get them out generally around the time that they promised, but the amount of fidelity and depth that they give in those is very limited. So my expectation is Space Legs, especially in its initial implementation, will be a lot like how I experienced the Dune buggy gameplay in Elite Dangerous, where I have my one buggy and I have a couple things I can do with it, and eventually they fleshed out more things to do with it, but it's still just the same buggy, right? And the same way that I go down to a moon, and I go down to another moon, and I go down to another moon, and outside of very special ones that you have to, like, know where to go to sightsee, most of them you can tell that they're procedurally generated. And it allows you an immense amount of joy when it comes to exploration and travel. But it does present a lot of problems around, hey, purely generated content that is just auto-generated. You start as a human to understand the algorithms enough that it becomes predictable. So high fidelity art coming into play is really important, particularly as we go into a first-person experience. We are going to know that it's procedurally generated the same way that every fucking animal in No Man's Sky for the longest time looked like the same amalgamation of hellish creatures, right?
Do you want to rewind a little bit further?
Sure.
Did any of you guys play Spore?
Oh, I love Spore. I love Spore. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was like hyped up to be like the most amazing, never see the same thing twice game in existence, and guess what?
Yeah, you saw a lot of the same
thing twice. It was just the very similar wrong thing.
Honestly, though, if they had the advantage that Spore had was that it was pulling from things that were created by its players. The difference being that No Man's Sky and an Elite Dangerous aren't pulling from their players. They're not pulling from human artists, which gives it a bit of a disadvantage in what kind of unique and polished touches you end up with. I played with my wife and my children in Spore. They will spend hours upon hours designing a creature. right? Like when you go through the evolution process, you put a lot of effort and thought into these things, especially as you become a veteran player. And so in later iterations of Spore, once they had the EA like network thing fully working, you did end up with a lot more uniqueness to it. And
I guess I wasn't playing around then, but
yeah, I've actually played it like last year even. And I've seen a lot of things I never saw when I originally played it because it's pulling from all the creations from other people. Now, you see the same thing in later iterations of No Man's Sky where they've done a lot of work to better create these things, but these are artists' touches. This is the same thing that makes the fidelity of StarCitizen, even though it's one system, so impressive, right? It's I'm able to go take pictures in space like a space photographer in StarCitizen in a way that I have not ever been able to do in any other game.
Yeah.
And that's a critical piece. Okay, so here's the next question about DualUniverse. Do you guys think you'll play it at some point in the future?
Not when it's a subscription-based service.
Okay. What about you, Melissa?
I don't mind subscription-based services. I just need to see more of it to see if it'll really grab me, to be honest. Like I love building. I love the idea of building spaceships. You know, like I play a lot of those builder games, Robocraft, Minecraft, etc. And I'm actually signed up to play on Salty Mike's Eco server coming out on the 9th, I think. So I like those kind of games. I just haven't seen anything so far in DualUniverse that's made me like really like, oh my god, I need to play this game. You know what I mean?
So you haven't seen a career that you're super interested in the game quite yet.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I get it. Like there's building in it. I like that. I like the idea that you can build spaceships, but I haven't seen enough of it yet to make me go, wow, I need to play that. So will I play it in the future? I don't know, maybe. You know, like, and I don't mind the subscription fee. I just have to want to play it enough.
I think it would depend on how many people I had playing it that I was playing games with at the time. If there were a group of people and it was like, oh yeah, we're hanging out, we're just having fun, and it just becomes another medium for me to interact with people that I like to play games with, that's a different story. But if it's just alone, I don't think that it's got enough to... I will sit down and play StarCitizen alone, and I will do the same for Elite Dangerous. I don't think DualUniverse can pull me in on a solo basis just because it's not pretty enough, which is a very strange thing for me to focus on, but I think that it's what it is.
I think... So from my perspective, what I might do, because I do have a lot of interest in it, but I don't think I'll enjoy the game alone, is I will probably collect a list of people who are interested in it from the Super Friends and try and plan a month that we can all play it together. After we've watched people play it a little bit more and make sure that we really like, okay, cool, it's got enough that we want to try out X game loops. And so I think that for me to enjoy it personally, similar to what I'm worried with Cyberpunk might be the case, is I need to have people to play it with. But even more so, given that DualUniverse really seems to hammer in that you're pretty useless alone, you should be playing together. And like everything I've seen is basically, even on their own pages, is like, you should be working together as a group. Otherwise, it's going to take forever. And I think that with me, I generally get pretty frustrated with too in-depth of a build of a spaceship. But I really enjoy piloting, and I really enjoy like doing the scouting and those kind of things. So if there is that kind of behavior where, oh, I need to go out and gather resources, or I need to defend our little base or something like that, I'll be into that. But I would rather leverage some of the people in our group that really love designing things, like Bud, Taters. We've got a couple people in the Super Friends who get super into designing things, but then they're done, they're bored. right? Enough. Yeah, I know you like to get into it, but I haven't played a lot of games with you that involve actually designing things, right? Like
All I do is
for
Minecraft.
for context, guys, when you watch me play Minecraft, I just get dirt and sand, and that's all I build with. Sometimes cobblestone.
Oh
Right?
my god,
I don't.
that's hideous. That's
No,
hideous.
I
Pandora.
build sandcastles. That's it. I go find a spot, I make a moat, I build a sandcastle, and then I dig all the way down until I hit the bottom, and then I fight shit. That's it. That's what I do in Minecraft.
I'm never playing Minecraft with you.
No. But I make a good base of operations. You're able to build all of the automation and stuff, but
I'm just messing with you.
No, but I mean, like, it's totally reasonable. Like, I don't go and destroy other people's machines. I'm very impressed by them. I like to like have someone explain how it works and everything. And I'm like, cool. I'm gonna go kill some ghouls, right? Like, I fundamentally, it's the same thing that happens in other games with me, where like there's certain game loops I really like. You will never see me enjoying trade in StarCitizen. You'll never see me enjoying mining for extended periods of time, but I really, really love killing shit and blowing up ships and flying through corpses. All that stuff is great. I love that.
What if created a penalty to it?
What?
When they were talking recently about time trades with volatile substances and needing to make sure that the stuff that you're moving around the verse doesn't destroy your ship or doesn't invalidate itself, do you think you'd find that more interesting than I'm going to jump from point, land, pick up, jump, land, sell, pick up?
I'll definitely enjoy it, and I'll test it like I test everything. But understanding myself, I know that it would have to be very engaging for me to really get into the gameplay. And I don't really generally care about my money in games. I get just enough to get by, and after that, I just want to have fun. Mm-hmm. Right? And so, like, I work IRL in everything I do. Even when I'm gaming, I'm working, right? Like, so I don't want to take away the joy that I do get from those games. And that's one of the reasons that StarCitizen really calls out to me, because I can just buy a ship and not have to worry about it, right? That's important to me as someone who just wants to be able to fly that ship. Whereas Elite Dangerous has so much risk built to it. That's the game that actually brought me to StarCitizen. That's a game that made me brave enough to try an advanced flight simulation at all. But then I lost everything after 3 years because I didn't understand the risks that I was taking, to the point where I was back in a starter ship. And that was really rough, and it basically made me start treating Elite Dangerous like it was IRL. The risks were too high, and I stopped having fun. And that's something important to understand with all of these games, is that we have to balance the fun that we're delivering to our players with the amount of realism that we introduce into the gameplay. At least for me, right? I understand some people don't have as much IRL stress as I do, but I don't like to have a ton of stress in my video games.
No, I love Tarkov, but it's very stressful, and I can only play it in short bouts, and I only play a game or two every once in a while because I don't like the stress of, oh, I'm dead, it's all over. Whatever I just had, if I was taking a big risk, it's gone.
Yeah.
I like a degree of that, but yeah, like it can also like equally really ruin a game for me. Like for example, like Gandora said, if you ended up back in a starter ship after X amount of time, that would be a place where I'd be probably like, all right, Alt F4, fuck this game.
Oh, for sure. I'd lost one of my ships in Elite Dangerous because I didn't have enough money to insure it, or to pay the insurance on it. And it was my Anaconda, and I lost the entire build I had with it. And I was like, God damn, I'm so upset.
No, and it's...
Even I hopped on the other day because somebody wanted me to play with them, and then it was like, oh, I forgot that I don't have this build, and it still angers me that I was like 50 credits short and that they wouldn't just let me go in debt. But you know, there's some beneficial aspect to it.
It's definitely one of those things that that has to be balanced in any of these games. Now, we kind of covered it already. Why do you think that a lot of SE players are jumping into DualUniverse? And we've talked about, it being in between release cycles, and there's some synergy in the gameplay. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to point out that we haven't already covered, or I feel like we've already covered it pretty well.
Not really. Yeah,
exactly why a lot of SC players are leaving momentarily to explore DualUniverse. Yeah. It's new, it's fresh, but at the undercore, the developers of the game, both games have things that they love about them, about space, and that they want to bring forward. And as the players, we like those things, and it's just another way of experiencing it from somebody else's perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's just cumulative exhaustion at this point with gameplay that we've had for 2 years now.
Yeah.
No, there haven't been any really serious alterations.
At least a year. Though I would say the flight model change. Let's not short sell that.
Yeah,
I won't short sell it, but it's still the same game. Change. It's the same game.
It wasn't as much of a learning curve. Once you learn the new flight model, which didn't take that long, because
then you're like, okay, now
very, very well.
Then it just goes into grinding, essentially.
Once it was, hey, stop going over your SCM speeds. Okay, all of your problems have now been solved. Okay, you figured out how to get combat again.
It's good. They'll tweak it, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, it's still the same game that we've been playing with no real additions and not a lot of depth for.
I think the AI guilds are going to give you an improvement in gameplay because then it'll make grinding worth something. I'm sitting here grinding out these missions for being a good guy bounty hunter versus just like a bad guy bounty hunter, I guess.
All right.
And they have no benefit else than giving me money, but if you got more out of it, that would be awesome.
So I think that, guys, we've now run this show quite a while. If there's any questions that anyone has, now's your last chance to ask them. I felt like tonight's show went really awesome. Nuff Butter, Masocast, thank you for being here. And everyone who's watching, Red Lear for that amazing raid. Seriously, thank you. It's really been enjoyable running this, and this is exactly the kind of show that I've been wanting to have for a long time. So I appreciate you guys being here to run the experiment with me. Nuff Butter, once again, tell everyone about your beautiful hair and where you get the products to work on it. Yeah. I mean, like a bunch of people were talking about your hair earlier, so I just thought I'd highlight it.
Kind of frightening.
Could you also explain why and how you're not a real astronaut for anyone who missed it?
Well, why I'm not a real astronaut is I'm not old enough, and how I'm not a real astronaut is I've never tried to be.
All right, and now you know.
There's that.
How did we actually title him not a real astronaut?
I said something along the lines of going to space, and I'm like, I'm not a real fighter pilot, and I'm also not a real astronaut.
He was going on a big rant about missiles and torpedoes,
and
the bullet penetration and how knowledgeable he was on it, right? And he's like, but I'm not a real astronaut. And I was like, yeah, but we should probably keep that clear.
Show up.
All right, and Masocast, tell us a little bit about yourself and the meat space.
I'm Masocast. I exist in the meat space for, I guess, 4 out of 7 of my weekdays. Those other 3 days, I stream sometimes. I am not a professional streamer by any means, but I do stream here, Masocast. Twitch.tv/Masocast. You can also find me there on Twitter. The closest thing to production value I have is my Masso's Absolute Zero Effort science show on Mondays, and given the title, you can tell how much actual effort goes into that. But we do like to come together and Just like, I don't know, talk about science and futurism and stuff like that.
I might be
other than
down
that,
to put zero effort in with you sometime here. Just
oh,
let me know.
dude, yeah, absolutely. I just hang out in my Discord channel and voice. So like I have
Yeah.
like an open invite if people want to like
There you
come
go.
in and talk
There you
about
go.
stuff. Like last week we talked about the Fermi paradox and probability of life in the universe. The week before that we talked about like consciousness transfer and cloning and stuff like that. So we just go into like really weird spaces like that, and it's kind of fun. But yeah, other than that, I stream kind of Monday, Wednesdays, sometimes Fridays, and yeah, really low effort streams. But I like to talk. So if you want to chat about either StarCitizen or whatever else, I'm down.
There you go. So speaking of weird space topics, have you guys heard of the octopus-like creatures that may inhabit Jupiter's moon, as claimed by a space scientist?
Wait, sorry, say it again.
Octopus-like creatures. Here's the title of the article, and this was brought up earlier in the show, but I kind of glossed over it because it was super tabloidy. Octopus-like creatures inhabit Jupiter's moon, claims space scientist. A British scientist named Professor Monica Grady recently came out in support of extraterrestrial life on Europa. And he believes that they're octopus-like creatures. I thought that we should, while we're wrapping up, talk about that briefly here. Okay.
So as a comment, it is entirely possible that Europa does have life on it, because it is a moon with what we have discovered to be a salt, like a briny ocean, liquid water ocean underneath the crust. So and because it gets like a relatively large amount of heat from like tidal forces of Jupiter, it is entirely possible that there are like geothermal vents that have life living around them on Europa. However, the amount of energy that Europa gets and the amount of energy that's available underneath that incredibly thick ice crust means that any life that does exist there is likely bacterial or single cellular. But ultimately we won't know until we go there. So
no, I think that there is a good chance that there is life out there, but that they would be giant octopuses might be a stretch given the amount of energy that is available. By the way, folks, we are rating Sergeant Tickles, so everyone stick around. Sergeant Tickles is currently playing DualUniverse, so I figured it's a great segue given we spent the last portion of this stream talking about DualUniverse. So anyone who was interested in learning more about it, this will be our opportunity to go in, give some love to Sergeant Tickles, who's another amazing StarCitizen streamer and a variety streamer, an all-around awesome guy. If you haven't met him, you should definitely check him out with us. And if you haven't already followed myself, Nuff Butter, or MassoCast, please be sure to do so. And again, Nuff Butter, Masso, it really means a lot that you guys have spent so much time with me tonight, and I really appreciate you being here for the inaugural episode of Welcome to the Future, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.